All right, 6 o'clock, we'll call the special council meeting of November 21st to order. Any additions or deletions to the agenda from administration?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. With council's permission, we'd like to move 5.1, which is the closed session item, up to right after the approval of the agenda. So let's start off with a closed session item for council.
Okay. Anything from council? No. Motion to accept an amendment to the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Mayor Cosby, thank you. All in favor of that motion? Motion to accept the amended agenda. Councillor Butcher, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. So we're looking at 5.1. If I could get a motion from council to go to closed session.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Spicer, thank you. All in favor? Carried.
So, I'll just start off with a couple of quick instructions, just basically things that I emailed out for planning ahead. We're going to start off with the operating budget presentation. We'll go into the capital budget presentation, and that'll be the goal of day one is to get through our 2023 budgets. And then moving into tomorrow, we'll go into our our 3-year operating plan and our 5-year capital plan. And we'll get into our questions, things like that. So we've rolled forward the same process as what we did last year with the flagged items, if you guys remember what that was. So if you have any questions, inquiries, we will note them, answer them if we can. If we can't answer them, we'll add them to our flagged items list, and we'll bring that list to tomorrow's meeting as well and follow up on those as well. So that'll carry over, and then as we have our time in between tomorrow and December 1st for our 3rd meeting, if there's more questions that come up, those will be added to the flagged item list and answered based off of that, and I'll recap that in day 3 again as well. So that, as well as alongside that, if you got any questions or anything, please ask them at the time of, because we can answer them best at that time. And as I said, if we defer the question or if we don't have an answer available at the time, we will bring it to the next meeting through our flagged items process. So Ken's going to start us off with a brief message here.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So back in June, council had a discussion regarding the 2023 operating and capital budget. Council gave administration several principles on which to build the 2023 budget on. Administration has worked diligently for the past 4 to 5 months using these principles as well as the recently approved strategic plan to build the budget that you see in front of you today. The approval of the recent strategic plan is crucial to determining the direction of the 2023 budget. In order to make the strategic plan come alive, it is imperative that our resources, both financial and human, be focused on ensuring that the priorities outlined in the strategic plan are strategically allocated. Budgets are generally difficult to rationalize and make work. They are an attempt to balance wants and needs, must-haves and nice-to-haves. And this budget is no different in that regard. There is one significant difference in this budget, though, and that is inflation. Inflation in 2022 is at historic levels. Not since the 80s has inflation hit the levels seen in 2022. This inflation is projected to, at the very least, remain in the general vicinity. As we all know, our interest rates in Canada continue to rise in an attempt to fight that inflation, and it has been stubborn for the last 6 months and maintaining in that 6.5% to 7% range. Inflation, though, is not borne by municipalities, but like our residents and businesses, we must navigate this reality with diligence and a strategy to ensure that the long-term sustainability and prosperity of our community is not compromised. This budget has been met with a reality of belt tightening and simply having to do less in certain areas. We have, however, kept key service levels for the public at or above our current service levels. We have followed council's strategic plan, ensuring that we have prioritized areas in economic development, customer service, communication and engaging our community, and endeavoring to make Redwater a destination of choice and an affordable community in which to live, work, and play. We have recommended spending in areas where we believe that additional equipment and more specialized equipment or technology will better assist staff in ensuring that service levels can be maintained and in some cases even enhanced. There are some instances where in order to provide the current service levels, we do need additional human resources. What we haven't done is eliminate funding for the long-term sustainability of our community. In the past several years, the town has made gains in ensuring that the long-term replacement and maintenance of its most crucial infrastructure is being planned and funded. The steps taken in the past years are still in place, with this maintenance and renewal continuing to be a priority. In order to bring our budget in line with the cost of inflation, we have utilized reserve funding wherever possible. The use of this reserve funding does not jeopardize our infrastructure replacement or renewal, However, it does take away some future flexibility in funding other potential projects. And it does not bring us any closer to a fully funded strategy for the long-term maintenance and renewal of our critical infrastructure. With that, I've given council a couple of teasers and highlights of the budget that you'll see over the next hour and a half to 2 hours. My colleagues have spent many hours fine-tuning the document and are eager to present the 2023 operating and capital budget for the town of Redwater. So without further delay, and without hearing me any further, I'll turn it over to our presentations to our finance and our general managers.
All right. So back to me now. Yeah, so get in there. All right. So just to give you guys a brief overview, this is how we've organized it. Goal is to go through all of our theory, overarching and overheads, utility rates, that kind of stuff, and then we'll get into the divisional stuff to close it off here. So you'll be with me for the next too long period of time, 20 to 30 minutes. I'll try and make it as painless as possible for you though. So, all right, we'll get right into it. So our mission, our values haven't changed. This was what we able with council and administration to come up with at our strategic planning session. So just a recap on mission and values there. Municipal service equation, again, municipalities are in the business of quality of life, so everything we do with our operating capital, all of our budgets, all of our money spent is ensuring quality of life for our residents and providing services that they require, and also programs as well, such as recreation, etc. So this year was an interesting one. I put together some high-level budget challenges and drivers. For this year, obviously you guys got an update to the strategic plan to go through, so we were able to shift our targets and our focus areas in order to ensure that that was being met. Challenges included hyperinflation for cost of goods and services, for example. As Ken mentioned, I have yet to see anything lower than 6.5% right now. On average, it's been quite a bit higher than that, actually. For example, middle of the year, June, which is the last Edmonton report that came out, we were at 8.5%. So it's a fairly significant driver at that point. Policing costs have gone up again, of course. I believe this is the last forecasted increase at this point. So we're up to $133,000, which is an increase of $44,000 over last year. So if you think about that, over the last 4 years we've had to increase our budgets by $133,000, which for us is over 4%. So that's driving a pretty significant increase alone there. Aging infrastructure, again, a problem for all municipalities. We continue to have, not necessarily issues, but things to address with the aging infrastructure, which is obviously a hard thing to fund and plan for. Long-range reductions forecasted for our MSI capital and LGFF. Again, this is more on the capital side, but it also does hit us in the MSI operating, which has been confirmed for this year, but it's anyone's guess if it continues after that. So, one of the drivers for this year is we reintroduced a community services coordinator position to increase programming and efficiencies. We'll get more into that as we move into the salaries. So, again, like I said, some higher level stuff, things that affect us as an organization as a whole, and we'll get into some more specific ones when we get into the divisional challenges. So some assumptions that we have for this year, specifically with grants. Obviously we've included MSI operating. The province confirmed that that's going to be in place for 2022 and 2023. So if you guys don't remember, that's allocated currently to our fire and disaster services contracts. So that's what pays for that at this point in time. FCSS grants, we've remained them at the same level, and then federal summer jobs we've included for the seasonal positions as we normally do. So assuming those go through, that's where we'll see the grants come in. In regards to the franchise fee and utilities, not major changes in this one, but what we've done is, and I'll speak more in depth on these when I get into the areas for utilities, but our Fortis franchise fee, we originally brought in to offset our Pembina Place debenture and borrowing, as well as to offset the police expenses. We've obviously never done that in full because those expenses have exceeded that, but we've targeted that, and that's what we've made sure that there's a reason for introducing this type of fee. So what we've recommended again for this year is to do another 2% increase, and it would start in April as we have to go through all the advertising and everything. Yes, Councillor Olson.
Thank you. With 1%, I'm trying to find it in here. The original idea behind this was for policing, and if there was left over, it would go to the debenture. Now I see we're adding sewer line projects on there. Like, the whole idea behind this was just for the policing costs, so the non-tax paying people, or for power, policing, hospitals, so on and so forth, they're paying for towards the policing. So now it seems to be like it's going into a general revenue idea as well, which I don't think is, well, that's not what I wanted. So
That's fair.
if we're doing it for grabbing money, we may as well bump her up to 20.
So just to provide further information, sorry to interrupt, the amount that's allocated towards the sewer liners is the remaining amount, which is about 8,000, I think it is. So it's not a huge amount we're talking. The vast majority of it is going to our debenture and our policing costs.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
And also, this year you noticed in the capital plan that we couldn't fund sewer liners. So that was the reason why we added that in. Because,
Couldn't fund or could fund?
We couldn't without cutting some other items off the capital budget, so it isn't going into general revenue, it's going to supplement the utility capital reserves, because it's gonna become harder and harder with the grant funding being cut to continue to fund capital projects that we technically should be doing every year, when there's other projects that come up for one-offs that we have to buy as well. So it's becoming problematic to fund capital. So that's why we thought if we could take a little part of the franchise fee to start putting it aside for some of these capital projects. But I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Olson, so.
So I do have a further section on the franchise fee specifically, if we want to
I've seen
talk
it quickly
more
there,
about
but
Yeah.
the numbers are too small to read when you,
That's fair.
before you got past it.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about it for sure, and we can definitely circle back to that, absolutely. So moving on then, the other increases that we've recommended for this year have just been in the UCI fixed rates for the gas, water, and sewer. Again, doesn't benefit our bottom line in any way, it's purely just more money that we're putting away for our future capital spend, which numbers are steadily increasing, so we're trying to come up with strategies to offset that. So those are currently included in the budget, just so you guys know, and like I say, we'll speak more in specifics when I get to utilities for those items. Moving into our asset management strategy, so I won't go into depth because we don't normally change too much, but just to show you guys, an example, we have our UCI investment with the increase for $3 a month for the bills. It actually gives us an extra just over $38,000. So that's something that we utilize in order to fund our future capital costs. So like I said, doesn't affect our bottom line, but helps us become more sustainable. The other change this year is that we've started to build up a technology reserve, so that's the bottom line there. We've got $35,000 in there currently to start building up our technology reserve, as we're going to start seeing some technology, not issues, but things we're going to have to deal with moving forward. So, big scary slide. When we started this off, so normally we give it out to the departments, they fill out all the information, do everything, comes back, we review it, and then we sit down as a leadership team, go through it all, start making our, I want to call them cuts, but our reprioritizations and reductions. So this year, I can't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it was 19.2% we started with, believe it or not. That's how high we started. So just to give you guys an idea, I'm not going to go into details or anything, but this is provided for information. This is some of the bigger ticket items we reduced across the board, brought it down to 7.06%. So that's sort of where we started, where we got to, and then what we're presenting on at this point here. All right, so into the summary then. So, as you can see, we've got a fairly significant, I guess you could call it operating revenue and operating expense increase, but as always, those numbers don't matter nearly as much as our municipal taxation line there. So, as you can see, we've and this budget recommended a 7.06% increase, which equates to $221,377 over the previous year. Now, the one thing that I want to message, I do this every year, so you guys probably already heard it, but in case anyone listening in hasn't heard it, best practice for finance is when we bring forward a budget, any increase below inflation is technically a decrease at that point. So just so you guys know, the target to bring at inflation is because otherwise, if you're bringing a budget lower than what inflation is, you're technically actually reducing your budget because your costs are exceeding what you would normally budget, assuming that you make no changes. So at the same level, exact same, theoretically a 0% increase would be a budget increase equal to inflation. So just some theory. Again, CPI is not exactly the right metric to use, as I've talked about before. I'm working on ways to calculate MPI, and the goal of that is to be able to present MPI and have that be more transparent so I can show what the actual effects of inflation are on our basket of goods, not the consumer price index basket of goods. So hopefully we'll see that next year. So as mentioned, inflation right now is in and around 7%, but of course that's always a lagging indicator because they're always reporting previous. So we've got a summary of our previous year increases. As you can see, we've kept our pre and post-COVID numbers, but I'm not moving forward any more pre-COVID numbers because it's not having as much of an effect on our budgets at this point. So you can see where the increases would have been pre-COVID before we made adjustments to our post-COVID budgets, call it, or V2 budgets, where we dropped it down to 0%, reduced our services in line with what we couldn't offer anymore. So the reasoning for dropping was because some of the services we weren't offering could be reduced out to bring it to a 0% without affecting other service levels. So as you can see, pretty big number this year, driven by inflation primarily. And then just a comparison again, provide this for you guys every year. Every year I look and I hope that Statistics Canada will have updated their numbers, and every year I'm disappointed to see that they have kept it at 2019. So we haven't had any updates from Statistics Canada, but just to give you guys another comparison, our average increase at this point based on the average ratepayer assessment is $11. Bringing us up to about $175 per month, and compare that across what the other areas are, you can see the services we provide far exceed the single services that you're paying for in other cases. Tax rebate, this one was really easy again for this year. We don't have any qualifying developments that will meet this, so we have no projected eligibility for residential assessment for next year. Into inflation. So this is the big, I don't want to say the biggest, well, I should say, this is the biggest driver for our budget increase this year. Inflation has hit record levels. Everything that I've read, and I've spent a lot of time looking at inflation this year because it's obviously the biggest impact on our budget. It was supposed to hit a peak in the summertime and then start to level down towards the end of the year and hit around 3 to 4%. That's what they told us at Q1, end of Q1. End of Q2, they said, yeah, we messed up. This is going to be longer. So they didn't give much details. Q3 hit, we had our GFOA conference. We got to hear from all the economists from Scotiabank, from CIBC, the really, really big guys up in Toronto that know that that's their job, basically, right? They told us this number is going to stay, and you'll start to see some leveling out down to around the 3 to 4% mark by mid-year 2023 potentially. So they've obviously took the number, moved it back a full year, so we'll see if we end up jumping back further from there. But just to give you guys an idea, what I usually try and bring is my July to July, because usually we're getting into the budget and Edmonton doesn't normally publish their report too much later than this, but at this point they've only reported up to June, actually, surprisingly. So 8.5% is what the June number was. I believe it was going to be 7 to 7.5%, and you can see Alberta and Canada numbers are at 7.4 and 7.6. So it hasn't shown any signs of decreasing significantly. If anything, it might level out around the 6.5 mark potentially by the end of the year. So into cost of living. So I do this I actually do this for the region, and I give them the numbers after. I just requested put it all into a table and everything, so you can see the numbers that have been brought forward for COLA for 2023. Right now, we've included 4% for staff and council, and then you can see the comparators. The only one that I put an asterisk beside is Sturgeon County, because for some reason they're using an average weekly earnings number instead of CPI. I think I know the reason why they're doing it, but it's not really a great way to go about it, so we've just kept using our CPI number, because that's kind of our indicator for where wages should fall based on what consumers have to spend on from there.
Excuse me, Ryan, you want to talk about that now, or council raise? Yes or no? Before we carry on?
Sorry?
Do we want to talk about council raise, yes or no, before we carry on?
We can table that, because that will come up later,
Okay,
if you're okay with that.
I'm fine. I figured it's the first slide that comes up with the info. Nail it down.
There will be more on it, so we can for sure
I
get
know,
to
I've
it,
gone through
absolutely.
the package already,
Yeah,
but
yeah, for sure. Any questions before I move into wages and contributions? Anything else other than that? So far, I've gone through a lot, so I just want to make sure I don't. No? Okay. All right, so into wages and contributions. Again, usually the biggest part of a budget, most places that I know of, it's around 50% for wages and contributions for the municipality. We're actually, I don't want to say significantly, quite a bit lower than that. I think we're around 32 or 33% for our total wages and contributions, so a lot less reliant on that kind of stuff. So for 2023, 27.1% instead of 26.7%, so we saw some slight increases percentage-wise. Total projected wages, 2.469 million, and then the increase over last year is just under 200,000. So biggest drivers for this is we've recommended an additional position for community services coordinator, which we'll speak to later, and we provided the business case around that, so hopefully you had a chance to review that. We budgeted for a full year of CAO this year, which we didn't have in last year's, so that is an increase in salaries, but will actually be offset by a reduction in contracted services across the big three departments. So won't really see that as much, but there is a reduction as a result of that in the budget. And then also a budget for a full year of dev officer position, or land use economic development officer, which is what we call it. As mentioned, so with inflation around 7.4%, we've included 4% for employees in the budget, compensation adjustments related to service excellence, council COLA at 4%, and then also in there is the common anniversary date change to January 1st for all staff, as discussed in a previous council meeting. Into the contributions, so again, we saw another increase in contributions. 546,000 is our forecast for this year. Last year's was 481,000, so it's an increase of about 64,000. Again, big drivers for this one includes the community services coordinator position that we've reintroduced for this year. Smaller is the cost of living and merit increases, but that does have an impact on it. The biggest driver for this one, though, is we continue to see steadily increasing costs for our benefit providers. Again, this is across the board, so it's not isolated to us, but there's been some fairly significant increases over the last couple of years. So just so you guys can see, the benefit rate adjustments that I included in my original salaries budget was a 6% increase for dental, a 10% increase for health. EAP doesn't ever seem to change for some reason, and then life I did a small increase. I actually was almost bang on the money with life, and health and dental, the difference is equaled about the same amount. They were just in a different skew from what our renewal agreement comes out with. So obviously the biggest increases in there is just from our rate adjustments from our provider. For LAP specifically, we did actually see a small decrease in the above YMPE amount, so above the max pensionable earnings. So that went from 12.8% down to 12.23%. So there was a slight reduction in there on both the employee and the employer side. Just a little graph again. I show this to you guys every year. You can see the distributions across the board for our salaries from there. So into the overheads. If you guys remember last year, I had 10 slides on all our overheads. I've condensed it into one this year. Don't feel the need to go into the detail around ones that don't change every year unless our contracts change. So brief overview. Insurance premiums, again, it's always a get shot in the dark. Diane and I always sit down and we're like, well, what should we put for this year? Because they always tell us 10% or 40% even, and then they go up 5%. So we've included an increase there. So you can see our projected premiums are 146. Last year's budget was 137 and actuals were 133. So we've been pretty close on our targeting. We usually like to guess high rather than low with insurance, especially since it's been steadily increasing at a pretty good level here. Power charges, again, streetlights is 40% of that, so we did see some pretty good increases in here. The biggest driver around that I was able to see was around Pembina Place and having it open for the entire summer, because we have the lights on all the time, we have everything going, so we saw some pretty steady increases in there, plus with the new HVAC units and whatever else we put into there too with the ice plant. There are some power savings in some areas, but new equipment in others. So they've kind of offset each other to the point where we've seen some increases in power usage. So big note to make on this one though is this year we saw a slight increase due to usage. Next year we're going to see a fairly significant increase due to price, because our contract ends at the end of this year, at the end of 2023, and 2024 we start a new contract that's got a much higher power rate, unfortunately. But we've been lucky to get what we've got so far, thanks to Diane and her awesome negotiating tactics. Town gas, water, sewer. So again, another fairly significant increase in this, in my opinion. Biggest driver, believe it or not, is not even necessarily the gas prices, but the carbon levy. The carbon levy is going up a significant amount, and they didn't tell us at this point when it's going up. So it could be effective January 1st, or it could be effective April 1st like they normally do, but they didn't tell us. So in my forecast and in my budgets, I've included it starting January 1st. So we may see some cost savings from there, but I don't actually know until they announce it, and they haven't yet. Or at least I haven't seen it. So that's where we're driving the increase there. WCB premium is again another slight increase, purely just due to the industry rate increasing. So the industry rate's gone up from 1.6 to 1.77 last year, so we'll see how much it jumps up again in the next year here. Landline, cell phone, internet, garbage, and recycling, I lumped it all together. You can see we have a very significant difference of about $32 it is. So lumped them all together. Not going to go into too much detail. Same kind of thing with our postage and copying. We don't have any real major differences in there. So they've remained static from there. All right, into the utility rates. So got some slight changes in this one as mentioned. So what we've recommended, or I should start off. Always our best practice goal is to operate all of our utility departments at or greater than cost recovery. That's our plan. That's what we always strive to meet. So this year what we've recommended is increases to the UCI rates embedded in the fixed rates, which helps us to plan ahead for future sustainability. So water variable stayed the same. UCI increase is up by $1, so it's $16 per month instead of $15. Same thing for sewer. Variable rate stayed the same, $1 increase in there. Garbage, we didn't change anything in that one, so the fix and UCI stayed the same. That doesn't really fund our other utility services, so we didn't recommend an increase in that UCI at that point there. Gas, also same things. Same variable rate, but recommended a $1 increase, or $2 technically for the commercial, since it's double the rate of the residential. So just to give you guys an idea, this is what our 2023 utilities budget looks like. So without any changes to the variable rates, we obviously see a little bit of a surplus, call it, in our water and sewer. Garbage is $387 in the red, but not worth recommending any changes to rates or anything like that. That's close enough to cost recovery for us at that point. Gas, we still are seeing a significant, call it a dividend from our gas services, where we can charge market rates and not target cost recovery, but target our market rates. So as you can see, we've got a little bit of money coming in from our utilities to help support our taxes, which is a much better place to be in than the other way around, where your taxes are supporting your utilities. Comparisons, won't go into too much detail, just suffice it to say we ensure we remain competitive with our fixed rates and commodity prices as well. Water, sewer included there, and then I've got garbage and gas on the next one. So if anyone's got any questions around those or wants more information, don't hesitate to let me know. I can look into some stuff for you guys for that as well. All right, Any questions for utilities before I move into franchise fees? Not seeing any. All right, so we'll get into the Fortis franchise fee. So what I've done is I've included, this is a calculator that's provided to us by Fortis based on the numbers that they pull for our averages for usage, distribution charges, all that kind of stuff. Basically, it's all data is put into a table, and it lets me use the calculator to see what the impacts are for a franchise fee rate increase. So what we've recommended for this year is a 2% increase, which again would be effective April 1st because of advertising, all that kind of stuff that we have to do. This results in an increased revenue of approximately $31,000 as I have to prorate for the first quarter, which it doesn't show in there. Again, the goal for this is to target an increase towards our policing costs, our debentures, and then the leftover we assign to sewer liners reserve for our future capital sustainability. That number can realistically move anywhere we want it to when it comes down to it. That's just one area that we identified as going to require funding in the next couple of years that we want to start putting away money for. So I did include a little bit of a strategic alignment on there on community sustainability. I'm not sure if that one exists anymore. It might have gotten lumped into service excellence, but I think it's important to note that the franchise fee increase we are using to fund specific targeted items. We're not using it to increase our necessarily our general revenues. Might disagree with that, Rob, but it's targeted to sustainability initiatives or costs that we have no control over, basically, at that point. So before I go into some questions, I just want to show the impact on a ratepayer and our comparators for our region. So for a 2% increase based on the Fortis calculator, again, I don't own the data behind this, I just report on what it gives me. An increase from 8% to 10% is a $3.78 increase for the average consumer for power. So residents would see a theoretical $4 increase per month on their power bill as a result of this increase, to put it in perspective. Regional comparators for the area, with Bon Accord 19%, Bruderheim 2, Gibbons 10, Lamont's at 7.5, Legal's at 15, Morinville's already up at 20, which is the maximum, and then Westlock's at 14.75. Any questions, concerns? Want to speak more?
Go ahead, Councilor.
So our policing bills to 133 for 2023, and we're gonna bring in 220. What would 1% be?
I don't have that answer, but it would theoretically be half of what it is. So about 15,000 would be the increase in a $2 impact.
I'm just going back to the original reason why because we fought it for years, not to bring it in, but then when the province passed on the policing, the whole idea was policing. And then if there was anything left over, throw it on the debenture. You know, so I mean, this here's looking like, you know, we're $87,000 over what our policing costs are.
How much is our debenture each
So
year?
it doesn't matter. It was, the debenture was whatever was left over. It would go towards the debenture, right? It was, the whole idea of it was just to bring it in for policing. Anything left over went to debenture. And now it's, I'm not saying it's revenue grabbing, but it's, you know, roughly $87,000 over what our policing costs are.
So if I could speak to that just a little bit. The reason why we are proposing an increase to the franchise fee is because it does enable us to not necessarily minimize the tax increase, but it mitigates some of the tax increase. Because a franchise fee increase, again, I've said this multiple times before, you probably all heard it a lot, but I'm going to say it again. A franchise fee increase hits everyone equally. The more power you use, the more you pay for your franchise fee. With taxes, we've got the hospital, we've got the schools, we've got whatever else that's tax-free, so they don't get hit by that tax increase. So it's a more fair and equitable sharing of the increase of costs that we can utilize. Municipalities are very limited in our revenue streams. We can only do so much. Where the provincial government has all the time in the world to do stuff is they don't have to propose an increase on your taxes, because as you earn more money, you pay more taxes. So it's theoretically increases as time goes on. We don't have that luxury as a municipality. So for us, we target what we feel is the most fair and equitable areas to hit, and then that way it mitigates the tax impact at that point then.
I understand exactly why you're doing it, but I mean, I'm looking at a $3 increase already on our utility bill, just from the fixed cost. The 7.5% or 7% increase on taxes, another 2% here, you know, so it's like, basically everything that's going to our residents is being increased. And I mean, if we could, I understand that, you know, we have to do all this, you know, but I mean, basically, we're hitting every aspect of their lives within the community is increasing. So that's why I'm just trying to see if there's somewhere to save a buck or two.
So further to that, there, what we'll ask for at the end is a target, basically, where we want to get to. The one thing I will say with this is, if we don't do a Fortis franchise fee increase, we hit the taxes with the difference. So
Difference of what, though? That's the thing, though, because this wasn't supposed to be for anything other than policing. So that's why I can't understand, like, how you would say it. Whatever this is gonna fund, then yes, that's gonna be hit on taxes, but I mean, it wasn't, you know, I think I made my point that it wasn't supposed to be. You know, so, but I mean, it's gonna come around and bite us somewhere anyways, but I mean,
Ms. Pazmani, go ahead.
I can jump in. So if we can get through all the presentation, like Ryan's saying, these are options for consideration, right? So there's increase in franchise, there's increase in utilities. It's all included in this budget right now. That's just over 7%. And then council can consider what they believe the residents can sustain, right? That's your job as governance. Our job is to come to with options. So the option here is, because we're using it to go to sewer liners, well, what impact is that going to have then on our long-range sustainability, our capital plan? If we're not putting money away for it, we can't do it, or we're going to have to cut other capital projects in the future, because with the reduction with grants, we're running out of options to fund capital. So there's all those to think about too, right? So we're just trying to put something in place to try and start putting more money away so we can do these capital projects. Because there's only so much funding to go around. So that's all presented in here for you to digest, and then come back with us however you want to digest it. And so it's in there right now, so I hear what Councillor Olsen is saying. But as time goes on, when we did put the franchise fee in, we had more grant funding. Inflation wasn't super high. Things change, and we have to come forward with other proposals where we can get funding from. So that's what we've tried to do.
Mr. Van Buell, your hand was up.
Yeah, I guess, not to put words into Councillor Olsen's mouth, but what I'm hearing is that you want to know what the effect of not increasing the franchise fees and only using the 8% and only funding the policing, and what that would have, and what effect that would have on our budget. Is that, did I hear that correctly?
sure.
Anything else from council? Just a quick reminder, your first slide, it very clearly says draft. We're here to hear.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're here to hear the information, put it as best we can. If we have the questions, throw them out right away so that we don't lose them. We can never lose those. But we have to look at the fact that just like our residents are trying to put a stamp on whether it's food or accommodation or transportation, we're having to do the exact same thing at this level. And we want to make sure, like Councillor Olsen says, that we're speaking for our residents as best we can on the whole process. So, yeah, so far we're good, and we will have questions. There's, you know, like I said, I've got a dozen or so that I'm really concerned about, and I'm sure every councillor does. So,
yeah, so
push forward.
yeah, so we'll include that as one of our flagged items listing, and we can speak to the impact it'll have to remove that when we do the rest of this stuff.
Your worship, so when are we gonna debate these? Ryan said that, you want, talk about it now, and you're holding on to many questions. So when are we gonna debate it? Wait till the end when we're cold on the idea, or?
I think at the end of today, they're looking for all of the questions to come forward to give as many answers as they can. Anything that they can't give an answer for right now, they will flag as an item for further research, bring it back to us, and if necessary, we always have the first scheduled meeting in December for budget as well. So we're not
I
passing.
just wanted to know what the process is. I mean, because it sounds like yourself, you're holding on to questions. You said bring them forward at the time.
Just
So,
because we haven't got there yet. I'm not holding anything that we haven't talked about yet.
As questions come up, feel free to ask them, absolutely, because like I say, we'll note them, we'll circle back to them. Tail end of tomorrow is when we'll do a recap of our flagged items, and then get into more of the deliberations at that point. So that's the heavy debate will be tomorrow, but obviously if you've got questions, never hesitate to ask them, for sure. Yep. Okay, anything else before I move on franchise fees? All right, you've heard enough from me. Pass it over to Ken. We'll get into our council division.
Thank you. By the time we're done, we'll hear enough from all of us. So the council division, I guess, is relatively simple. And one of the things that we tried to do in each of the divisions, whether it be the council or community services, infrastructure, or corporate services, we tried to outline what our challenges and what our opportunities were in each of those areas. Obviously, for council, inflation, you're going to hear this one over and over and over. It is our biggest challenge, and it's a challenge that we have to meet. As both Councillor Olson and the Mayor have said, we've got to wrestle with the same issues that our residents and our business have. We all have priorities, and we got to separate the nice-to-haves from the must-haves and the wants from the needs. And inflation is going to be a big part of what that does for us, not just today and tomorrow and into December, but throughout all of next year. One of the other challenges that we have is in intergovernmental affairs, and it's that giving us our strength in our region. I think we've done a couple of things here in the last probably 3 or 4 months that have really put ourselves, quite frankly, at a leadership position around the table on different things. The waste energy issue is one where we're participating in a big way, and those are the things that are going to give us standing in our community, and I think that's one of the challenges to continue that for our council. In development and growth, we've heard this time and time again as well, and that is kickstarting growth in our community, coming out of COVID and ensuring that the growth of our community is reflected in what we do and how we do it coming out of this office. Everything from our land use bylaw to our MDP, and making sure that we become an organization and a community that doesn't just say we're open for business, but proves we're open for business. You've heard this one as well. The long-term sustainability of our community is at the forefront. We know that costs keep rising. We know that grants keep going down. But we know that our infrastructure, not that we're in any worse shape than anybody else, but every day that goes by, our infrastructure gets a day older. And we need to plan for that day when our infrastructure needs to be repaired and or renewed. That's the bad side of the equation. Here's the good side of the equation. We have a lot of opportunities, and we have a wealth of opportunities in our community. We have a tremendous opportunity to capitalize on our location, becoming an affordable regional hub for residents. We know, we've heard it, the cost of living in cities, the cost of housing continues to rise. Our area and our proximity to the industrial heartland gives us a tremendous opportunity to capitalize on that, and that's up to us to do. For those of you who were at the business mixer last Tuesday, we heard about all the growth that's on the books or being investigated to be on the books in the industrial heartland. You know, the number that got thrown out is somewhere between 25 and $30 billion that's being investigated right now. So there's a tremendous opportunity for us to capitalize on that. The other one is our municipalities' involvement. We need to take, and I would encourage our council to take the opportunity to get involved wherever possible on those provincial boards and committees, Alberta Munis. We have a number of professional associations, and getting our voice onto those boards, committees, not only from council, but from our administration, is a tremendous opportunity for us to be heard and to be seen as leaders. And then the last one that we put in here is capitalize on our new and enhanced tech infrastructure. Our new technologies, wireless and fiber optic, are required to sustain that growth going forward. There's a tremendous opportunity. There's a lot of money available in that area, both from the province and the feds in some recent announcement, and our ability to tack onto that and deal with that is going to be paramount. One more? There we go. Pardon?
Yeah, it has a commentary on.
There we go. Okay. So there's a little bit here from council. You know, the first one we'll talk about is a reserve transfer. There's $1,023. One of the things that we put into this budget is there's a little bit of a reserve money there to do some work on our old fire truck to help it be a little bit more accommodating for when we go to parades, etc. Certainly not a must-have. It is something that we get a lot of mileage out of, I believe, as a community, being involved in some of the things that we're involved in. Not doing this would leave the money in the reserve, would not affect our bottom line. The second one is in staffing wages and contribution. This is council's wages, I guess, and it's the increases due to the COLA benefit rate increases from our benefit providers. So just like administration has those, so does council. The third note here, staffing costs and training. There's general reductions, and this is just us streamlining of the training initiatives with council. We took a look at it, what we've spent in the past, and we've streamlined that into one, and we found some savings in there, things that haven't been used in the past. The fourth, we removed a subscription, and we moved the Leaders Caucus costs, and that happens every, I guess twice a year. And we've moved that out of training and other, we've moved it to training away from professional fees, because it really is a training opportunity for council. So it's just a movement of those dollars. Last one, increased, there's a big one here, $64.90, and that is an increase to our IT contract from Trinus, and that is something that's spread out amongst the organization. So the total, this is the cost that's allocated to council on this. And then 6, it goes back to that reserve transfer. We've put some dollars in there to work on the canopy. So with that, I would.
Are there any questions on the council stuff?
Councillor Melnick, your hand. Oh, Rob, go ahead.
Why such a big increase in our IT?
So what we had this year was the realization of a contract increase that should have taken place 2 years ago. So they've changed the way that they've provided the service, the costs have gone up, they just never hit us with it until now. So this year we've seen a big increase because they found our contract, said, hey, you guys are getting this for ridiculously cheap right now, we need to bring you up to the market rate as your contract's expiring. So we've seen a pretty significant jump. The biggest number of that increase is around the storage of our backups. So we do cloud backups as opposed to hard copy backups now. The cloud backups are actually kept at their facility, as well as a hard copy from their facility is kept with their owners. They've got a contingency plans basically in place so that there's 3 levels of protection. Now, we've had this service for about 2 years and they haven't charged us for it. They finally caught on to it and started charging us for it. So that's not the only thing that's driving the increase in goods and supplies, but that's the most significant thing by far. And you'll see that across all of the different divisions. I believe there's quite a bit of it in here because we've got quite a few devices in council, but I think the actual increase year over year was around, if I'm remembering right, 18,000 for the increase for this year. So it's a fairly significant increase, and we were lucky to keep it as low as we had for the last couple of years, basically.
Okay, and I know one of the questions we've had, I think this is my 5th or my 6th budget cycle that I've been in, but I think the same question has come up each and every cycle, and that is the cost of our base salaries, our costs of being council.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where Rob was going to earlier. And, I'm just wondering what council's position is with respect to that. Doing?
I vote to a 0% increase for council.
Same here, George.
I concur.
So,
I
just
say 0.
before we vote,
We're not voting.
okay.
Just letting you know.
Okay, I'm just going to throw that across the board. I honestly believe as a council, and I'll speak for every council I've sat on, I won't speak for the other 2 who've had longer council tenures, but I don't know of anybody who has sat at this table because of the wage they were going to get. They were here because of the benefit they were going to provide to their community. And the fact, it's a fine line, because yes, you want to make sure that you're enticing good candidates to come forward, and of course one of the ways to do that is to provide them with a greater stipend. The other side of that is, if you're enticing them with a greater stipend so that they can come and collect it and do nothing to get it, you've lost right from the get-go. So I would think that from what I've heard here is council is asking, can you tell us what it's going to look like without an increase?
A round number is, I believe, around 6650 is what the reduction would be. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was around there, but I will make sure that that's included in our flagged items options discussion for tomorrow, for sure.
Does that catch what we were talking about?
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
I do have another question with regards to the contract for IT. We have to buy our equipment through them?
We
If
do.
you don't go to Best Buy and pick up our iPads at $700, you have to pay $1,000 or whatever through them?
And buy the iPads from them.
No.
The only thing that I actually physically buy from them are the computer units themselves. I won't pay their markups on monitors. I won't pay their markups on. I try not to pay their markups on cabling, things like that. I usually try and order that third party through Amazon or something like that. The only thing I physically buy from them is the computers and the docking stations if there's laptops, because those all have to work.
No, I was just wondering, 'cause I know a few years ago, my company donated one to the fire hall.
Yep.
And they wouldn't put all the programs on it because I didn't purchase it through them.
Yeah. And they won't service anything that's not through them.
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of, third-party service contractors make rules like that. We kind of have to follow them because we don't have the manpower, the skills to manage all that ourselves, basically. But yeah, so I do try and minimize what we buy through them because their markups are fairly significant. But computers is one thing I have to purchase through them.
Oh, I understand buying your desktops and that, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, one thing I did want to mention was about 8 or 9 years ago now, we did have a situation where we did have to go back to Trinus, and we did have to get our material and everything else because of an opening of a thing that crashed our system and what have you. And knowing a person who was involved in about an equal-sized company to ours, If we didn't have that ability, that's huge. It's almost unrecoverable in some respect. They spent the better part of 11 months recreating 1 month's work.
Exactly.
Just to try and catch up to where they were, sort of thing. So some of those extras are well paid for, but I do agree with Rob when he talks about looking after our dollars and cents as best we can, so, okay.
The other thing I'll add to this as well, just because we're talking about it, is right now, cybersecurity is a huge, huge, huge thing. So one of the big things that we've done is make sure that we are as best protected as possible. We probably pay a higher contract fee because we do so much more to protect the privacy and data of our residents. The one thing I will say though is insurance is changing. The way that the insurance is going is it's changing. There's a very, very high likelihood, maybe it's not 5 years, maybe it's 1 year, 2 years, insurance is going to start requiring higher standards for us to follow too. And when that time comes, we won't have a choice but to follow those higher standards if we want the insurance. So we'll probably likely see some more increases once those come into play, but as of right now, there's no requirements. So we've done the best we can to provide the services and best protection possible without breaking the bank, basically. And you know, the next step up from where we are right now is a managed security contract, and that we're talking like another $12,000 to $20,000 on top of what we pay already. So,
Anything else from council on the council division? Okay. I'm just wondering, we're about to move into the corporate services division. Could we take 5 minutes?
absolutely. Yep.
So I'll call an adjournment for 5 minutes. Thank you very much for that, administration. We'll call the meeting back to order. And it's Ms. Paismeni's time to talk to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're going to go into Corporate Services Division now. So, we've already heard about inflation, so I'll keep talking about inflation. So this budget preparation was extremely hard, as you saw earlier when Ryan showed you the number that we did start at. Inflation is at super high levels right now. We're also coming off of the effects of COVID, prices going up due to supply and demand, etc. So all of that plus an uncertain global economy, where you don't know what's going to happen next as to affect the price of goods or supply. Also reduced grants from federal and provincial government, making funding capital initiatives that we've talked about already as well, becoming harder and harder without affecting either increasing reserves or increasing taxation to fund them. Still provincial downloading of costs, including policing costs. Human resources challenges. Legislation is always changing to do with employment standards, so keeping pace with those. Maintaining changing employee records and changes, and not only ensuring the physical safety of our staff, now also ensuring the mental safety of our staff. So we've been really focusing on that, and that is always a challenge. Legislative and legal services, integrating and training for council members, and maintaining and updating policies and bylaws to make sure that they're current and applicable. Other challenges to do with records management. Risks, we talked about that with IT. Of course, records management isn't just pieces of paper, it's also IT and managing privacy with ever-increasing cybersecurity threats. Increase collaboration and communication to improve efficiencies and transparency as well to our public. Taxation and utilities, of course, our volatile markets. And higher interest rates is putting a lot of pressure not only on our residents but on our businesses, keeping current with their payments. And that also has a knock-on effect of managing our cash flows to maintain the municipality's sustainability as well. On the corporate planning side, our corporate plan, of course, is going to have to be updated coming out of the new strategic plan. And this is getting harder and harder to maintain with restrictive budgets. While trying to, present something usable to council, it's going to go to our residents, but also while maintaining service excellence and high service levels that are expected of our residents. We continue to tie up and prioritise our objectives through the strategic plan, and I think we're getting better at that, but we're getting much better as well on this budget too. Operating initiatives, so starting with service excellence. So in this budget, corporate services, value-added technology for budgeting. Payroll we already did this year, but that's continuing with new technology for that, which obviously increases efficiency of staff time as well as increased reporting. The new corporate plan we'll be working on, following the strategic plan, focuses on mental health supports for staff. Is very important, and also working on transitioning our employment policy to an employee handbook in 2023. Continuing to invest in professional development for council and staff to maintain that service excellence. We're also have a wage review to ensure that our staff are being paid market rates, not only to attract staff but also to retain the staff we have. We haven't done a full wage review, so this will be engaging a consultant to do this to make sure that we're paying the market rates to keep our staff, because it's always way more expensive to replace them with training, etc. and onboarding. Continuing our staff surveys to assess the staff morale, again relating to staff retention. Ensuring our cybersecurity is maintained and keeping our technology current. Engagement and communication, increasing opportunities for our public engagement and events, ensuring transparent and understandable reporting for the public, including posting council expenses on our website to have more transparency, and linking our communication and projects to the strategic plan. Public engagement will be going on key bylaw updates, including animal control, community standards, and land use. Under a destination of choice and affordable community, the council planning session for 2023, we're planning on doing a deep dive into long-term capital plans, tying in with the future sustainability of the town with our aging infrastructure. Also, as well as planning for long-term replacements or alternatives for aging infrastructure for recreation, including our pool. Support from corporate service for contract renewals to ensure cost and service effective. So we're providing service excellence through our contracts, maintaining and supporting current contracts, and consistently reviewing our policies and bylaws to ensure they're meeting the needs of the community. Whoopsie, I went too fast. Economic and successful growth. So some special projects focusing on future sustainability of the town by looking into alternative revenue sources and tapping into other areas that we can maximize with other ones disappearing or dwindling fast from provincial and federal government. Timely financial forecasting, ensuring our investment interest is maximized to its full potential for revenue, cutting red tape for resident and business attraction, and business community engagement and partnerships. So that's on the operating side. On the capital side, I thought we updated that picture. We do have a new one with Jen in it, but we only had a full corporate services team back today after like a month. So
It's in the printout.
It's in the printout. I don't know what happened to the. So she is in your printout. That's good. Yeah, we're a full team today after like a month. So I was going to have to Photoshop someone. Yeah, and the capital, big project for us. Just the one project of service switches. So to ensure the integrity of our data systems, and of course within corporate services, we're ensuring capital budget and long-term financial plans meet not only legislative requirements but also residents' needs and funding. This is the corporate services division year over year, so 2022 to 2023 budget. So the first item, the user fees, you can see has increased there. So this is driven by two factors predominantly. Are you okay? Do you have a question?
No, I lost one page in my presentation.
Oh,
That's
which
okay.
page?
This one.
Next.
Just trying to breathe past this one, I guess. So this has come up, obviously one of the drivers is,
Okay.
good?
We got it. Yeah.
Increases in prime, of course, so we're making more money on our bank accounts, so that makes up a portion of this, and also driven by higher tax penalties coming in. So, and it's not higher. This is more like I've looked at, okay, what are we really getting? And a lot of the drivers are developments that aren't paying. So I looked a lot harder this year and increased it because I always err on the side of caution, thinking a development will pay. But if I looked at the history, I've budgeted kind of over cautiously in the past, so it's a little bit more realistic. And I looked over the last 10 years, so I didn't just look at a couple of years to see how it went. So those are the two drivers for this, for the increase of 88,000. Reserve transfers in 2022, the 47,000 was for the office renovations and some attempted repairs to the electronic sign. In 2023, these reserve transfers a portion of the tax mitigation reserve, and there's the tech reserve used for the implementation of our new budgeting software. Under staffing costs and expenses, so we talked about this in the council, so you'll see this in all the departments due to COLA and merit and the change to the common anniversary date. And the training and other costs, inflationary increases, of course, for hotels and travel. There's 2 additional conferences in this year. There's CAMA Don't ask me what that stands for, because I don't. Canadian Association of.
Municipal Administrator.
There you go. Got half of it. And OH&S. So sending somebody back to the OH&S conference. We're building up the OH&S committee again. Thanks to Garnet. And Jen has actually almost finished her health and safety administrator training. So that's in addition to Send Hurdle Convention there in 2023. Professional fees. So this is increased due to the MNP contract for HR and personnel management, as well as a portion for a consultant for a wage and salary review, the increase in IT contract costs that we already talked about, and the budgeting Questica software that's implementation's being funded by the reserve. Under repairs and maintenance, the reduction I already explained in the reserves, so that was because the office renovations were completed in 2022 along with the sign repair. So that project is completed. Inflationary increases are on power, gas, and the carbon levy for utilities. And finance charges is a slight increase there of $3,000. There is the new EDI program, which I don't know what it stands for, electronic something. So basically, all the payments that used to come in on our fax machine now come through an electronic package. Of course, the banks charge us more for that. So it does save on staff time, but you know what banks are like. So the fees went up, keeping pace with technology. And the 2023 reserve transfer there I already talked about. That is going into reserves for future technology. Did anyone have any questions? No questions? I will pass you on to Garnet.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just jokes.
You feel that way that you dressed up like that?
Trust me.
I really wasn't speeding.
All right. So we'll just move on to the division challenges. I'm just going to hit a few, as I'm sure you've all read your packages, correct? So I won't bore you by going line by line. So family and community services, I know. I saw you do it and I was like, you know what? I'm doing that.
My bad, sorry.
Just joking. So family and community services, some of the challenges obviously a possible lack of provincial funding. We've been looking at this for a couple of years. Again, we're going to be heading to the polls soon enough, and we're never really sure what's going to happen with that grant. So it's going to be an ongoing thing until we get some stability around that. Moving on to parks, recreation services and events. Aging infrastructure, we've all spoken about that a few times. I can't talk about the pool forever and a day, but we've got units on top of Pembina Place, we've got a roof, all those sorts of things that are starting to age and starting to get to their end of useful life, right? So things we're going to start looking at. Also staffing and planning for growing services in the community services department. We saw the field house kick off this year. It brought a couple of extra things with it, extra power usage, but also the requirement for bodies is something to think about. Moving on now to parks and open spaces services, time and resources. So the ability for the park staff to actually do their job and help with events. We rely on those guys to do a lot of things for us, and their time is getting shorter and shorter. We've already taken over the Arboretum. We've got other things coming our way. Juggling priorities between their parks duties and obviously Pembina Place as well, as I just alluded to. So we've got a few little things going on there. I spoke to the library and the museum. What they gave me was they're struggling to find patronage after COVID. So a little bit of an issue there. I'm sure that's just a time factor thing. I think that'll come back. And obviously for the museum, they've been talking to me a little bit about storage. So they've got a lot of stuff in there, and they're run out of space, which is at the moment they're looking for some options how they're going to store this stuff. So a few little things here and there, but nothing screaming too loudly there. Protective services, fire and RCMP. So in reference to the fire, they're having issues with recruitment. I'm sure a few people have already heard about that, and through speaking to Sturgeon with that brings obviously they've got to train their people for the wide range of calls they can wind up on, right? So it's not just simple house fires. If they go out into the county to doing industrial stuff, they could be doing any number of things, vehicle collisions. So bylaw services, we've spoken to the RCMP about registered owner information, so we're not going to harp on that one too long. But the big one is building rapport in the community. While it's gotten better, Kelly's still seeing a little bit of that feedback, and however, I do believe it's much better. So still working on that, still trying to take the rough edges off a little bit, and but he's doing really well. So we're quite happy where that's moving at the moment.
You'll never get rid of that totally.
No, but we're going to do our best, you know, and that's all we can do, right? We can engage the community and try and do the things right, and try and simmer people down as much as possible. But I'm under no illusions. I definitely know it'll never go away. So, we'll move on to the operating initiatives, strategic alignment with service excellence. First one we've got is implementation of Perfect Mind software. I haven't alluded to this earlier, but I will allude to it now. So the Perfect Mind software, just because I'm speaking about it, otherwise I would have just skipped this point and glossed over it. But but at the end of the day, Perfect Mind software is basically an online registration, payment, and just a sign-up software, right? It'll do a number of other stuff, data analysis for understanding where our user groups come from, understanding where the people who visit our buildings come from, all that registered information. So obviously we won't be farming that out, but it's something that's very useful for us for future knowledge. Sorry, Rob.
Thank you, Gordon.
Councillor Olsen, I apologise.
This isn't the one that the county wanted us to have?
No,
Okay.
it is not. This is a different system.
Just wondering.
Would this in any way allow us to track, like, even minor hockey somehow, all the kids that are?
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look at. So if they come on and register with us, then we'll be able to track all those users' locations as well. What it will really benefit on is in a number of ways create efficiencies within the department, cut down on a little bit of time, and summer programs, obviously registration-wise, we've only got 2 kids. They get pretty balled up pretty quick. But as far as data analysis, it'll allow us to look at a bunch of different things. Currently, we asked for Section C, if I remember correctly, which is our user groups, but we get them sporadically and sometimes we don't get them at all. So this system will kind of cut out that middleman and the requirement to chase up paper. So yeah, it will do a few different things for us, which is great. So we'll go on to engagement and communication. Ongoing bylaw reviews, allowing for resident feedback through surveys and public engagement events. I apologise, a bit of a stumble there with words. But so it's something that we're doing obviously now with the bylaws. We've put it out. We've recently put out a survey. Next, we've got a public engagement event coming up, and we're going to run through that. And that's part of the new system we want to put in play and involve the community a lot more and involve the residents a lot more. So, moving on. To further operating initiatives, so strategic alignment, destination of choice, and affordable community. With this one, ongoing pilot programs such as our chair yoga exercises that is just taken off, and we see the registrations jumping in that. That's part and parcel of what we're trying to do. We're running a lot of pilot programs to try and understand what the community needs, and if they don't work, we get rid of them. If they do work, then we'll keep following up with these things and keep trying to find new ideas. So far, we're having a fair amount of success, and we'd hope to keep that going. So. Economic and successful growth. Ongoing attendance at bridal expos and wedding fairs. So what we have seen this year is the first year we piloted that as well. What we did see is a summer full of events in the cultural centre. We did see a couple of negatives come out of that, but that's part and parcel of renting and leasing your areas, right? So not everyone plays by the rules all the time, but they wind up paying on the back end if they don't. So our capital initiatives, as you can see, we've got the golf lounge, sewer line replacement. I won't go into too much detail with these because we'll go on to capital later on in the presentation. Having to place electronic vehicle charging stations, that's funded through a grant. We'll be paying a portion of that, and the grant will pay a portion of that. Having to place fixed furnishings project, that'll also be funded partially through a grant if we receive it. If we don't receive it, that one will disappear. Parks Toolcat project. We'll talk about that in the capital, and I see Ken giving me the glare. We'll talk about that, and Community Services Pump Jack Information Board project. So this is the project that will be hopefully replacing our information board that's located across from Burger Baron. But again, we'll go into greater detail with these later on in the presentation. Okay, so on to the financials. This is the good one. This is where I do the lawyer thing, make you get in more trouble than I am. Just joking. I think I might be in bigger trouble. So note 1 under user fees. What we're seeing is Ice Rentals budgeted back to 100%. Fortis franchise fees increase, and anticipated cultural centre revenue. So we got a little bit of a jump there, but it's offset a little bit by a few other things. Staffing wages and contribution, reserve transfers. We did the golf flooring, as you know. We had an issue with our Zamboni fill compressor, which we had to repair, otherwise we wouldn't have gas for our Zamboni. And we did the shale of the ball diamonds. So that's the reason for the increases there. In reference to grants, forecasted inflation on grants to be received. That's just what we've budgeted there. For staffing wages and contributions, note 4, increase due to COLA and merit. We also will see common anniversary date change, and again the new CS coordinator position, which we'll go into later as well.
We won't jump into too much around that. That's more where the business case comes in. So whether we want to do questions now on the business case or after, we can save them for after too, whatever works.
Exactly. Staffing costs, training and other. So we're increasing training post-COVID. One thing that's of note is we have a lot of guys in our facility that haven't got some of the correct courses that they should have working at the level they are. And that's what we're trying to catch up with now, is just trying to bring our people up to that level that we expect to provide the best service we possibly can. Inflationary increases for hotel and travel is also in with that one. Professional fees. We are looking at the IT contract services, which Ryan alluded to earlier. Obviously MNP, which Ryan alluded to earlier, and our Perfect Mind software implementation. Moving on to point 7, insurance, just an increase. It's just a forecasted increase to insurance rates. R&M, fair maintenance. So this is the offset to note 2 in the reserve transfer. Is golf flooring, Zamboni fill repair, and the ball diamond shale. Point 9, vehicle expense. So we're seeing increased gas prices, and the other thing we're seeing is higher maintenance costs for vehicle and equipment. It doesn't help when people are drilling out gas tanks and cutting out catalytic converters. So we're doing as much as we possibly can on that end. On to point 10, utilities. Increases driven by power consumption and increases in gas prices. So again, we open the field house during the summer. That's an extra 3 months of lights on in there that we normally wouldn't have had. But you add to that those 2 massive HVAC units on the north and south side of the facility, and they suck up a little bit of juice as well. On to point 11, programs and events. So we've got increased programs planned for 2023. Again, we're running as many pilot projects as we can. We're trying to force in as much value to the community as we can. And so far the reception has been good. We'll continue to do that until we run into a brick wall, being finances, or we work out some are not as doing as well as we expected them to do, and we're going to take those ones away. So this one will ebb and flow a little bit, but we hope to see that flatten out 2024. Point 12, library and community grants. And so this is an inflationary increase based on your own feedback to us. So that's the finance side of my presentation. I'll now pass it on to Nawaz to Barry.
Any questions before we move on? Can you
Sorry, I
to
apologize.
the members there, Nawaz?
I had a quick one. I'd like to ask first, though, just again, I know we said it before, but how much for 1% tax?
31,500.
Okay, 31. So I was just kind of curious, for staffing, if we do bring on a new one, how much more will that cost us in this budget if we did the full-time instead of the way it was. I was just curious of how much more it would.
Yeah, percentage-wise, about 2.5.
Yeah, the new position is budgeted currently around $84,000 is what the increase is for the new position.
So that'd be about 2.5.
It'd be two and a bit, yeah. Just about 3.
I'm no finance guy, but I was pretty close.
That was pretty good.
The one other thing I'll mention too is with the library and community grants, what we do with the library grant is we increase it based on what the COLA number is that we've carried in the budget. So it's a 4% increase that's currently carried for the library grant increase.
Which I believe is more than what they came to ask for, so, yeah.
Sorry, it was more than what they asked for? Okay.
And again, just before we move on, what we bring to you, as Ryan alluded to, isn't the end product. This is literally this is what we would like to see, but we're well aware of the fact that some things could change drastically. So, over to you, mate.
Anything else for Garnet from anybody? I just wanted to touch base. Now, you mentioned we're going to go to capital.
We'll go to capital after this, yes.
Okay, good. That's fine. You're off the hook for a minute.
Hey. Your worship and member of the council, I would like to talk about the operation engineering division, and probably you know all the public works stuff, but on the top is the economic development and planning, also the part of the operation and engineering. So we will start at the same protocol. We talk about the challenges, the opportunities, and the strategic plan, and then we can come up with the numbers. So under the transportation services, the main challenge is the aging infrastructure. And as everybody is talking except Garnet about the inflation, so I will talk about it. So with the inflation, it's very hard to keep up all the projects as per the capital projects or the operating cost to maintain all the equipment. So aging infrastructure is the streets, the sidewalk, the gas line, the water, the sewer. And you all know that those infrastructure was laid in 1940s or 1950s. So it's 75 years. And we are lucky that we have a good infrastructure, but it's knock on the wood. You never know when the water leak will start and keep going. And every leak, if we have one leak, it's almost $10,000 to $15,000 for 1 day repair. So it's a big challenge for especially with the smaller community when we are talking reduction in the grants and the funding, and we don't have the opportunities to keep up all the capital projects. Just like our gas project, I think is a very good opportunity. We have a good plan that every year we are upgrading our new infrastructure, replacing the old gas line. I expect that we should have some sort of funding strategy that we can have for the water line as well, So just a challenge. On the utility operation is the main challenge is the supply and chain management. With this COVID, some of the water meters, the hydrant parts, when you order, it takes forever. One of my capital project, upgrade the PLC system at our water station. We put the order in April of this year, and still we haven't got the parts. So this is a big challenge, especially, and same thing with the water meter. Sometimes you get the water meter in 2 weeks, and sometimes it takes 6 months. I know we are not the big customers that we are buying the bulk water meter, but sometimes we need 1 or 2. Last couple months ago, we need a 3-inch water meter. We wait almost 2 months. Those are the type of challenges we are looking into. And the infrastructure and engineering is the prioritize. How you want to prioritize. I know we have the 10-year plan. We look on the data. We look on the conditions. But it's a very big challenge that how much is the cost is involved. And every day with the inflation, you never know how much will be the cost. And when we talk about the planning and development, is the changes in the federal and the provincial government, and that all the initiative has been changed if the federal governments change. And the municipal environment is always changing, meaning the department must be flexible. And in the capital construction planning, we are lucky that our projects are smaller, and probably you heard a lot of projects, they bid on the project, put the tender, everything contingency, and when the bid comes back, it's too much. A lot of communities, they cannot do the project. And there are so many examples of those capital projects. We are lucky that we have very small capital projects. We are not taking in millions of dollars of projects, 100,000, 150. And the economic development is across the country. The rural Canadians face some common challenges: skill and employment support, affordability housing, access to service, and the ability to find or develop solutions to help build their communities. Those are the main challenges for our operation engineering division. And I will touch base few of the strategic alignments with our operation and engineering, what we will be doing. And just like in the service excellence, vehicle and equipment will be maintained as per the manufacturer warranty and the guidelines, because all my operating cost will focus on those initiatives. As you know that we bought the new tractor and the snow blower, provide the faster and the more efficient snow removal, and land use bylaw and streaming and simplification, and offer the personalized pre-planning services in relation to the anticipated developments. And we offer donation, both monetary and in-kind, community-based and the regional-based events. The other strategic alignment is engagement and the communication. We are planning to put more information on to the public through the Facebook, through the website, and probably you notice that whenever it's any project, we provide all the information we have. When project is starting, what will be the impact and how we want to do it, so that the public will know how we want to improve our communication. And we continued public engagement through the Public Works Weeks, activities like community, working with the partnership with the local school and the youth, just like we did with the barbecue at the Okra Park School. Continued successful Public Works Weeks, and we put the donation to the food bank. Those type of initiatives we want to take. The destination of choice and affordability community. Water main distribution system will be monitored and maintained and repaired to keep the community with a safe supply of water. Well-maintained sanitary and storm sewer system. The streets and sidewalks will be maintained to keep the community safe while walking or driving, and creating a connected, family-oriented community. And we provide the natural gas service at the best economical rates. Year-round organic programs continue to be offered to the residents at competitive prices, providing online permit and payment options. Those are some initiatives we want to take under the operating budget. And under the economic and successful growth is the revisiting town business license bylaw, making doing business in Redwater easier, land use bylaw, regional commercial engagement, and partnership with the Redwater Chamber of Commerce, and partnership with the Redwater Regional Chamber, and update the business community data. And this is our team at the Public Works and Operation and Engineering. And those are our capital initiatives. I will talk about detail in the business cases that come, but those are the few I can just highlight. The walking trail construction along the 52nd Avenue beside the Centennial Park, where we don't have any sidewalk. Sanding box for the spreader, and I will put more detail on that, what type of box we are buying. Fire hydrant replacement program, gas distribution line replacement, sidewalk and street overlay program, and water pumping station upgrade. So those will be my capital initiative. I will touch base all the details in my business cases. So here are the numbers. So the user fees, you can see the difference, and basically it's driven by the increasing prices of the utilities being resold primarily from gas and price increases, and that will be offset by the expense under. And number two is the $40,000 reduction, which is the water distribution condition assessment, which is we are working right now. And there was another project to buy the piece of the land for our gas regulatory station beside the SO gas station. So number three in the expenses, $94,000, which is the general increase due to the COLA and merit and the common anniversary date change. And number four is the staffing cost and training. The difference is the increased training for the economic development and the inflation increase for hotel and the travel cost. And number five, you can see the decrease in the cost in the professional fees, which is again the water condition assessment And on the top of that, we also reduced, in the most of the sections, we had some legal cost for employment legal cost, plus we put a contingency in every section for the consulting fees if we need any engineering consultant. So we reduced those professional fees to bring the budget towards the smaller number. And the number 6 is the insurance, which Ryan already talked about. The goods and services on the number 7 is again the inflation. When you buy it's around 6.5 to 7% inflation on the goods and services. The cost is increased. And number 8 is the vehicle expense. And vehicle expense also include all the equipments, repair, emergency, and anything. And you all know that the gasoline price and the repair maintenance has been increased. And number 9 is the program and events, which increase due to the chamber sponsorship and the business support program. Golf tournament expenses offset by the revenue. And number 10 is the utility supply purchase, which is driven by increasing prices for utilities being resold, primarily from gas price increase and offset by the revenue. And the number 11 is the increase due to the fixed UCI rate increase for future sustainability initiatives. And that's my presentation. You have any questions, I will be happy to respond.
Any questions through to Nawaz?
Yours didn't seem as bad as his. I don't know why he thought yours might be.
In operating. Back, thank you, Nawaz, that was great. Back to Ryan.
Yeah, to me. So, last thing I want to show you guys here is just our year-over-year comparison. This just shows the spread of the surpluses, deficits across the departments. Just, again, purely informational. Take it as you will from there. To close off, again, just a summary here. Recommended increase at this point is 7.06%, $221,377 over last year's budget. Before we get into questions, Ken's got a closing statement he wants to share here, so do that first.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, not a big statement, but this does conclude the formal presentation on the operating budget. As noted earlier, the budget was put together using the budget guiding principles. In our business plans, we've tried to outline how we've aligned our not just how we're spending our money, but also how we're spending our staff time, aligning to council's strategic plan. And I really want to thank staff for putting that effort into it. It shows our commitment back to council to say, it's our strategic plan, and here's how we're going to make it come to life, and it won't be a document that sits on the shelf and we'll pick up 4 years later and go, how did we not do this? How come this isn't done? It's something that we're going to continually review, not just at budget time, but as we go through our yearly processes and our initiatives. As we mentioned earlier, we've got a couple questions, that we've got to come back to council and give some answers to. If there's any other questions, administration is certainly happy right now to answer what we can, and again, bring back the information for tomorrow on the things that we don't. It's a bit frustrating that, there's not a lot of debate right now, but we're throwing a lot of information at you. Tomorrow's not going to be your last chance. If tomorrow we have more questions, we do have another date, December 1st, where we can come back and we can go through that information again. One of the things that I want to make sure is that we deliberate and we debate the pros and cons of what we're doing in our budget thoroughly. I don't want our community or our council to go, man, I wish we would have done this instead. This is the time to do that. We are not. We need to be quick, but we don't need to be in a hurry. And when I say we need to be quick, we do have a deadline of getting a budget passed sometime in December. But we have time to do this, and we have time to do it the proper way. The last thing I will put out there in my closing statements is, in addition to all the questions, one of the things that we debated internally with the administration long and hard was that 7.06 number. We understand in today's economic times, that's a tough number. We understand that, and we're prepared for that. And one of the things that we've done is, and we will be bringing tomorrow, is we'll be bringing to council kind of a list of priority, tier 1, tier 2 type adjustments that we think we can make to the budget to get that number lower. But those budget adjustments don't come without effects. And we've tiered them as tier 1 and tier 2, and we'll explain that tomorrow, what the difference is. Basically what we've done is we've said tier 1 are these things that will probably affect our reserves and our ability to produce that excellence in service levels. Tier 2 will be more actual service level issues where there'll be things that we don't do, that don't happen. And that's a deeper level cut. Again, we'll be bringing those forward tomorrow in addition to any of the questions that have come up. We've got a couple right now that we'll be bringing some actual numbers to. But if there's any other questions on the operating budget that you want to know, even if it's just information that go, hey, how does this work? Certainly we want to be able to bring it to the council. So if there's any other questions, and then I'll make a quick opening kind of statement on capital before we go on.
So my goal with how we structured this was to have day one where we present the information, identify questions, and then just let you guys stew on it for a night. Think about it, come up with more things, and then we'll go through our plans tomorrow and then get into the heavy of the debate. So if there's anything that you want information on, more information towards, potential things that we need to change, let us know what it is, and we can get the information compiled so we can have that discussion tomorrow once you've had a chance to think about it.
Go ahead, Councilor.
I have one. I don't know if we'll bring it up now or whatever, but I was just thinking, I guess it's not your guys, where you bring it up, like maybe council could do this or that on our end too, for our budget, you know what I mean? So, like, I didn't really see anything, like, is there any way to come back with something, like to say if council does this different, or if we arrange this way and, we can reduce, or, you know what I mean?
So that's the attempt of this, is to not only get your guys' feedback on what you want to see as potential reductions, but as Ken alluded to, we have a pre-prepared list of things that we had pre-identified, but we didn't want to go into those discussions so you had a chance to think about this, to digest it, and come up with more questions so we could get it all done at the same time and really go into the deliberations towards the tail end of tomorrow.
Anything more on operation for administration? Go ahead, Councilor Spicer.
I'm not sure if this falls under capital or another, but what do we average each year? How much sidewalks do we do, and how many length of streets do we repave?
I don't think we'll have that information available right now, but we
Don't
can,
think so,
we can
but
bring it for sure.
Unquestionably.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want average, or you want like the last 5 years? What do you want?
Yeah, kind of the last 5 years. What are we getting for our buck? Like, are we replacing 2 miles of road every year? Or are we, like,
have that in your head?
the dollar amount?
I have all the information. I can provide you last 5 year, how many linear meter, because it's not in the miles.
Yeah.
In the linear meters, how many sidewalks, linear meter we replace, how many meters of the road, street we paved in last 5 year, every year breakup, and how much is the cost involved per linear meter.
Thank you. So, here's a question for Councilor Spicer. Are you talking about just capital, or do you want to know what we maintain as well? Because there's a difference between replacing and maintaining, right?
Yeah, maintaining, I think we got to keep doing. But I think sometimes we can look at my idea is maybe we can instead of 200 meters of sidewalk, we're going to do 100 meters of sidewalk. And
Okay.
that's the idea there.
Okay.
What is it, 500 meter for sidewalk, roughly?
I don't know exactly the numbers. I don't want to say some numbers and then I apologize tomorrow. So I will bring the numbers exactly tomorrow.
I didn't figure you'd have that one.
We do.
If we can't have it tomorrow, we will. All these flagged items, the ones we can review tomorrow, we will review, and the ones that we can't will be provided to you ahead of the council meeting, but we will do a recap of it before December, on December 21st meeting, so.
Thank you.
I just think one of the things that's in the back of my mind is, especially on our training and development process, is what savings are available to us for online attendance. Because I know our caucus, the Leaders Caucus, is a split. It's in person and online. So if there's any economies of scale that we can look at in that respect, as whether or not that's a benefit to us across the board. I mean, it doesn't just relate to council, but it's something that we can certainly look at.
Absolutely.
I strongly believe in the training and the development. It has to happen. You can't have somebody pushing the buttons on the ice plant that doesn't have the training, or somebody running the or the grader that hasn't had the course or whatever. So you have to have those people that are capable and competent, but maybe not necessarily at Hilton rates. So,
Usually a discounted rate for online.
yeah, usually,
You're
and
not paying for the room or whatever, right?
and travel and stuff like that, subsistence. So that would be one of the things I'm.
Computer and Chris, new watershed, they're all by themselves there, there won't be computers.
So that kind of wraps up your operational process. We're just moving on to 8 o'clock. Can we have another 8 minutes?
I thought we were gonna adjourn tonight and do capital tomorrow.
We're getting through capital tonight. We'll make it happen.
We're doing the 2023 capital.
We want to save tomorrow for the plans and then the deliberations. I want to get you guys the information for this for next year today, so you got time to think about it, come up with more stuff potentially tomorrow, and then we can get everything addressed in time for you to really think about it over the next week and a half break we have.
Are we allowed to shoot Garnet down like tonight, or do we have to?
Wait for tomorrow.
I am waiting, mate, don't worry. I think I might wear a jumper.
Hanging just a little longer.
Hang on 1 second, please. We'll adjourn now for 10 minutes. We'll call the meeting back to order, and we'll move into capital.
So Ken's just gonna share an opening with us, and then we'll get into the process and we'll get into it.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, our capital budget, as challenging as our operating budget was, capital was probably tenfold. And I'm just gonna give you a quick example. We're pretty confident that the numbers that we got for our capital projects are accurate as at the time that we got them. And I'll tell you why. We had one particular project that we had to go back and have a double look at. And in the time that we went back to reconfirm what it exactly was that we were quoting on it, the price jumped over 10% in a month. So that was from August to September. And one of the things that we're not confident on is that price, or any price that we got on our quotations in August or September or even October, are gonna hold into January, February, March, or April. And so that's gonna be the caveat that we put together our capital budget on this year, is that as confident as we are that the pricing that we got was very accurate at the time that we got it, one of the things that we know is that as we move forward, all bets are off on what those look like. So one of the things that I think we have to be cognizant of is that we're gonna have to be flexible when it comes time to whatever projects we do approve. When it comes time to quote them and we get them back for pricing before we actually do them, whether it be spring or summer next year, we're gonna have some flexibility in how we deal with those potential cost increases as we go forward. So that's the one caveat that I'd put on the capital budget as it's being presented.
All right. Well, Ken told me 2 minutes. I think that was closer to 3, but I won't hold it against him. So, this year we've sort of changed things up a little bit. What we did was try and change the process so that the information for capital is provided ahead of time. The business cases basically have all the information in them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a brief overview of each item, speak to the strategic alignment, the funding, that kind of stuff. And then after every project, I'll open the floor to questions. If anyone's got questions, feel free to ask them. We'll direct it to the general manager who's responsible for it. But my goal is get through this, get the information to you, and then hopefully we'll see some questions or things come up that we can follow up with more for tomorrow as well if we can't answer today. So I'll jump right into it. First one on the list, is this big enough or do I need to make it bigger? I can make it bigger.
I'm struggling.
Okay. I can see it, but.
Yeah, but you're superhuman.
That doesn't mean much. That good? No, that's too big. Too big? That's good?
For me, it should work for everyone.
Awesome. So first one is our huge admin project. We always bring the biggest ones. So our server switch replacement. So this is the central hub that manages our entire server, basically. All the connections that come off of the server. Forget how many years old it is, but it's nearing the end of life. We could probably safely operate again for another year. However, the risk we run, again, as Nawaz alluded to, is COVID has done no favors to the supply chain. So the risk we run if we do not go forward with the replacement is potentially it fails. If that network switch fails, the town is out of commission until we can get a new one. Completely out of commission. There's zero we can do to it to maintain it. So that's the reason why we've included this project. So it's roundabouts $8,000. I just put round figures in, obviously not exact, but roundabouts $8,000. So this is one of the types of projects that we're actually funding out of this technology reserve that we've initiated and started to build. So that's that one. Any questions? All right, on to the next one. So next we have our pump jack and electronic sign. Again, this is a huge initiative that we've undertaken. the goal of it is to create a specialized information board and central area within town for special events and occasions. The current location of the sign, we've gotten a ton of feedback over the years that it's just not in a good place. It's dangerous for drivers when they're driving by to try and read the sign. So we've gotten to the point now where the repairs are costing too much. We can't source the parts. It's actually an American company that manufactures the sign, so trying to do service and support through them has become an absolute nightmare. So we're actually at the point now where it is not feasible to repair it. So we've brought forward a potential project to create a new electronic sign location, centralize it in the Arboretum area, and make that our center of town area for doing events, activities, things like that. We'll install some flags. We'll install the new derrick that we wanted to get repainted and put in there. So it's going to become our new centralized location. Potentially might even move the cenotaph. From what I've heard, there was discussions about having that there instead as the center of town location and the area for gatherings, things like that. So that's the goal. Again, strategic alignment is engagement and communication and service excellence, providing that central area. The other side of things too is right now when we do flag stuff, it's either the parking lot here or the other sign outside over there, or whatever the building's called right there, I can't remember. Legion, yes. What this does is it gives us a bigger central area that's not right adjacent to a road, not right adjacent to anything. So you get space that you can have more people all together doing things. So what we've done to fund this at this point, because obviously we don't have $130,000 kicking around in a specific reserve for this is a reallocation of reserves to put towards this project. I don't have the specific breakdown, but if you look on the reserve continuity after, I can point to the ones that we did reallocate for it, but it's an important project in our minds with the old sign coming down and, you know, the increases in gatherings, events, things like that.
Go ahead, Councillor Olson.
Thank you. Well, there's a bit of a conflict here between the business case and this.
Yeah, I
Business case says $77,000 and.
Oh, it didn't get updated. Okay.
Okay.
That just means the value is not updated. Sorry. The value is $130,000.
And the business case was updated. I don't know what happened. I noticed that this afternoon because mine that I printed out said 130.
Councillor Melnick, go ahead.
I had a quick question. I was just wondering what the total cost of just the sign was. Do you know that?
I don't have the breakdown handy. I'm not sure if we have it in the business case, but we can
I
provide
do
it.
have a quote, and I can bring that forward.
I just had an idea. I don't know, just spitballing because, you know, anything we could save the taxpayers or anybody nowadays with the way everything is, you know. I was just thinking, what if we maybe reached out to a few businesses and asked if they wanted their names, you know, around the sign, and maybe we could recoup some of this money, you know, even recoup 20,000 or 30, whatever, and, you know, they get their name on one side, someone on the other, and, you know, that could save, you know, 1% or 0.5% or whatever it saves, you know, and any little bit would help.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the capital is not funded by taxation.
Yeah.
So we don't save money in that way, but it would reduce the reserve. So yes, absolutely a possibility and something we will for sure be looking into as part of the project. In the interest of funding it, I have to fund it with what we've got. So absolutely, that is something we have looked into, and there will be potential revenue opportunities to come from it that we could potentially recoup and dump some back into the reserves for that. But, yeah, for sure. Anything else before I move on? No? Okay, so next project we've got listed, Pembina Place lobby fixed furnishings. So the goal with this one is to get rid of all of our fold-up tables, fold-up chairs, things that have to get moved every single time we try to do cleaning, all that kind of stuff, and instead put in some fixed furnishings. So this is those cafeteria-style tables where they're just up on a rod and they've got seating, you know, that kind of thing. So we wouldn't have to be moving things around. It gives us a more professional look to our arena. It ensures the sustainability of the equipment that's in there. It's more to make us look professional, provide a service to the residents, and while also increasing the efficiency around cleaning and things like that. So again, the vast majority of these are going to be focused on service excellence, this one included. Funding for this one, again, What we've done at this point is we've listed it as a funding project through CFEP, which is a partnership with RMHA. So we would look to utilize our not-for-profits in the area, apply for a project of this type, and if we get it, great. If we don't, then we look at either refunding it some other way, or we just postpone or cancel the project at that point. Any questions on that one?
Council?
No?
Just gonna throw something out there. I understand the concept. You go to most malls and you'll see it in their food court, exact. It does create its own cleaning hazards and problems. It's not an end-all be-all. The one thing it does do is it takes away the opportunity for us to use that area for any other purpose.
Very true.
Once you put those tables and chair configurations into play, that no longer becomes a small meeting room for a company with 15 or 20 employees that want to have a team building process or anything else. It also takes away the opportunity. I know in the past we've had some funerals in the big hall, and they've used that lobby area as a viewing area prior to the funeral. So that would take those opportunities away as revenue sources. So it does have drawbacks. It's not 110% given, but it's certainly something to think about with respect to it. So.
Yeah, if I can, just in response to that, Your Worship, is that while they're moving tables and chairs, we always have a liability issue, right? And anyone who comes in that facility and trips or stumbles and goes to lean on a table and that table disappears, we got liability wrapped around all of that. So while it has its drawbacks, I think it has some pretty good positives as well. I 100% agree with what you're saying.
I get up every morning to liability.
Me too. I think everybody does. Anything else before I move on? Nope. All right, so the next one on the list, again, this one's included arena seating. So this is the plastic fold-up chairs for our arena. Basically, the goal again for this one is, providing that service, the professional appearance, while at the same time, it'll help to encourage. And I mean, I'm just as at fault for this because I catch myself doing it all the time. You won't get the people walking on the seating area as much as you do right now, where there's been times where the whole seating area, you can't even sit there because it's just full of mud and they don't have time to clean it in between games, things like that. So again, another project targeted to service excellence. This one though is more CFEP again. If we can get the funding, great. If not, I think this is one that we've internally said, if we don't get the funding for it, it just goes away. We just don't do this one. So potentially, again, this is a value add project as opposed to we actually kind of need this basically. So any questions on that one?
I think it's a great idea. I've been to lots of arenas where they are, and sitting in ours, sometimes, your back's hurting or whatever, and you go to those. Oh, yeah, if you're there all day, and I think it's a great idea if we can get the funding. Yeah, for sure.
Anything else from council?
Just make them high enough. I was at the hockey game, and their seats are so low, you got two hands on the seat in front of you to get out of it.
It would help with that.
Yeah.
And again, I don't have any trouble with the application or the reasoning behind it. I just don't know if in today's economy, under today's situation, this is a good optical presentation. And CFEP apart, I understand the community buy-in and that sort of thing, but it's such a hard sell. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with the program. I understand what you're saying, about getting up and down and that sort of thing. But wow, yeah, come and sit in our plastic seat when you don't have supper this week. It's just really a dicey time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, just to clarify the funding, it's purely if we get the external source of grant funding that we can't use for anything else. If we get it for that, we would do the project. If we don't get it, absolutely wouldn't happen. There are many higher priority items that we would allocate funding to first.
Isn't this part of the ones where you were saying you'd work with other community groups to see if you could work with a non-for-profit to see if you could get grants for this? So if it's coming through that, avenue, since hockey club has a lot of money. You know?
Yes, so it's a partnership with RMHA is what we'd fund it through. How we do that with them would be up to, open for debate, but at this point, we've just listed it as CFEP and other, which includes partnership with RMHA, and if the funding's not there, this is quite easily the first project to get removed from the capital budget at this point, for sure. Anything else before we move on? All right, so, again, you guys have heard tons about this. I won't go into too much detail just in case anyone's listening in, just to provide a brief history. We have significant issues in the golf curling lounge bathroom. The sewer line's continuously backing up, has been a problem for years. Now that we've been able to camera it, get under it, we've figured out that it actually runs underneath the curling slab, which means it takes 45s and 90s and goes all the way around and does all kinds of stuff that you really don't want a sewer line to do. So with the way that it's done, it makes it nearly impossible to actually diagnose the issue in a satisfactory way and be able to figure out the best way to fix it without damaging the curling slab over top of it. So what we've done is we've gone out, got pricing to get a directional drilling done to tie that specific sewer line straight into our sewer main, which is actually just outside of the building. So this project, the funding for it at this point is very hard to nail down because it's like every other big capital project. The price we get today could change 10, 20%. Contracted services is hitting the highest right now because they get their inflation and then they mark up their inflation. So we're catching a significant amount for that. The funding for this one, we've actually recommended to repurpose a portion of the debenture that we actually have out right now. The reasoning being, it has to do with Pembina Place, which is what we borrowed the money for originally, and it's something that just, it has to get done, that we can't fund any other way than, well, I shouldn't say we can't. It would be harder to fund any other way than repurposing money that we've already borrowed for the facility at this point. That's currently sitting offsetting interest at this point. Yep.
Go ahead, Councilor Wilson.
So this is the leftover from the 2.6?
Correct.
Okay.
A portion of it.
A portion of it.
240,000 of it, yes. Yep.
Okay, because that was one of the questions I was gonna ask.
Yep.
Where's, the rest of that money type thing?
So the other side of that too is, yes, we can approve this right now, but repurposing requires us to re-advertise and go through that whole process again. So we still have to do that side of it, even once we've approved, if we go ahead with this one.
You have to redo a bylaw, a borrowing bylaw. And then the advertising.
Okay,
Anything else from anybody? So my understanding is that the idea would be to open the floor within the bathroom location, cap that line going underneath the slab, and then bring the other line back underneath, back out to the main that we just replaced 2 years ago, and they're finishing off the deficiencies on.
Yeah. I think from what Garnet told me too, they actually drill from the outside and bring it up inside afterwards.
So you're looking at probably a 2.5 foot square.
We're hoping so, unless they've got to search for that joint.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where because we don't have a lot of accurate schematics on the facility, we're hopeful that they'll get it right the first time and hit the line right where it is. But yeah, as Ryan alluded to, with it being underneath the curling slab, where the blockage is, we have no hope of getting to that unless we want to tear up our slab, which we don't.
then you're into the millions.
And just to be clear, it's not a diaper stuck in a line, it's a collapsed line.
So we actually cannot get to it because of the way the line runs under the slab. So what it looks like it does, so we've had multiple vac trucks on this sucker and we've cameraed the thing 3 times. And what winds up happening is we suck the line completely dry, put the camera down, and then right where it 90's down or 45's down, we can't even tell what angle it goes at. When we get there, there's water. And once you're in the water, you can't see a thing. So we cannot get that water to pull up to allow us to go in and see. The thought behind it is, at the moment, from what I've been told, is it's either pinched or it's collapsed. Pinched would be the better of the two. The collapse would be bad news, because even if we cap it, then we're going to have a leak under the slab, which is something we have to check out. But again, this is quote from AE Engineering. There's other people we can talk to. I did talk to a couple of other companies. One was not interested in touching it. Neither was the other one. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, and we will hopefully find a little friendlier version, which would be nice. That's the aim. We just had to put that in because this is worst case scenario at the moment. So.
Okay.
Anything else before I move on to the next one? All right. So next one on the list are electronic vehicle charging stations. So we actually pre-applied for a grant to see if we would actually qualify and get it, assuming that there'd be some oversubscription. And didn't think we were gonna have to worry about it this year, and then got approved for it. So it's been included. Basically, it's 2 level 2 chargers, whatever that means. I'll let Garnet explain that if you guys are curious. It provides a service to our residents and visitors that, quite frankly, I don't think is offered anywhere else at this point in a smaller municipality. So for us to be able to leverage some grant funding to provide an additional service, which not only benefits the residents and visitors, allows us to get into exploring options around improving our fleet into more green technology, our equipment, things like that. The big note on that one is everything to do with green energy and green equipment has grant availability. So it gives us multitude of opportunities for a very low starting investment cost. Again, like I said, 46%, I just put it under the CFAP and other grants. The 46% is there, and then the remainder would be funded from our Pembina facility reserve. The other thing I want to note on this too is there will be potential for revenue opportunities with this one as well. As of right now, vehicle charging station is not a regulated service. It will get there probably sooner than later, but once it's regulated or until it's regulated, we can come up with an idea of how to charge for this service that would help to bring in some additional revenue as well. Any questions?
I think Legal's putting 2 in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, let's beat Legal to it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Legal.
All right. Next one's a bigger project. So this is the Toolcat. Basically what it is, I wish I had a picture to show you. It's basically a combination skid steer bobcat and side-by-side type piece of equipment, but you get the best of both worlds with it. It's got a hydraulic dump, it's got availability to hook up all the attachments that we currently have for our bobcats. So again, a huge efficiency thing for us in this one is we would have a new piece of equipment that can use all the existing pieces of equipment that we have, and also allow us to share equipment to be able to do different things within the town. Again, another service excellence one. Like I said, almost all of them are from there. We funded this project or this piece of equipment from MSI Capital in this case, so it's not hitting any reserves, not hitting anything like that. Maybe Garnet can provide a little bit of additional information for this.
For sure. The other upside to this is currently we have a number of trucks. Parks utilize 2 in the summer. We could effectively drop that down to 1. It is a 2-seater vehicle. You can carry whatever you want to carry in the box, is 2,500 pounds or 2,000 pounds of dump capacity. And on the front end, obviously, can run anything a skid steer can run. So effectively, we might be able to look at reducing our fleet by 1 truck in the future. But believe me, anywhere I've seen these things in use, they are, I'm trying to think of a term that's not going to upset people online. But yeah, they are fantastic. There you go. But I was going to say duck's nuts for anyone out there. But at the end of the day, I apologize. But you know, they're a fantastic piece of equipment. They do it. They have a lot of really good upsides to them. Some of the attachments you can get can do things that we currently cannot do. We can get groomers for diamonds. We can run all sorts of attachments off this thing, and they're a little heavy, but for the most part, they're a hell of a piece of kit to have. So.
questions through to Garnet.
I know it comes with a price tag. I see you already.
No, it's
What's that?
Everybody gone.
Yeah, true.
resale of our Bobcat, probably.
Or of our existing one.
Yeah, do you think there'd be
In
any?
today's market,
Not much.
No?
actually in today's market, I'd argue it's higher than it would have been.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get 10 or 15K out of that, but that's not too bad considering pre-COVID we might have been at 3 to 5. So.
So some of our existing conversations, again, not included in the capital budget because we have to show the funding, but potentially we'll see some resale, whether we use that, well, it's funded by grants, so we can't really dump it back into anything, but we could use that money then to buy some more attachments, things like that, which would come as an amendment at the time once we've gone with the sale of it, so.
There's a difference too.
Was that Councillor
I
Olson?
think there was a difference between the cap or the plan and what's on the.
It might, if it was still the old one, it'd be at 95, and this was the one where we had the big 10% increase between
10% a month.
between July and
Showing 115, so.
115. Oh, that's because we took some stuff out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we'll take a look and we'll update the business cases and send them out again after. But
Your MSI capital sheet shows 105, and the spreadsheet you sent us shows 115.
You mean the business thing?
Your sheet,
The capital.
your sheet there is showing 105,000,
yeah,
Yeah.
and the one that we got
the
on your
business case.
on the attachment says 115.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah,
difference.
for sure. Yeah, it's 105 is what we've proposed. 115 was the additional attachments that we'll try and fund out of whatever we sell it for after.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Oh, I will revise those though for sure. Yeah. Anything else before we move on from there? All right. Okay, so on to the next one, the one and only walking trail for this year. So, I believe it's been discussed before, but again, just to provide some clarity, south side of Centennial Park, 52nd Avenue, does not have a sidewalk on the south side of the road or a sidewalk or walking trail on the north side, which is the park side. So we proposed to do a walking trail on the north side of the road, so the park side, that goes for the full length. This is a fairly significant safety issue, as right now, if anyone's trying to walk down that road during the winter time and the snow's piled up, you only have the road to walk on. So there's some liability there for sure. And again, it's just an opportunity for us to add potential liability. I will clarify potential liability, but it gives us a chance to add and continue investing in our parks network as well, in our walking trails network. Again, this is another one where we set aside reserves ahead of time to do this, so this one is funded through our walking trails reserve at this point in time. Any questions?
Through to administration. I have a question. I think this one has benefit to it, there's no doubt about it. My concern is in making sure it's where it should be, because currently, if I'm not mistaken, Nawaz is using that north side of that street for plowing. And if we have a walking trail there and we're plowing over on top of the street onto the walking trail, then we have the same situation that we've discussed across from the IGA. If it was moved back far enough, or perhaps on the other side of the trees, so that it could walk through there and not interrupt the snow, as long as the planning process looked after that, that would be my concern, not the walking trail, but.
So, Your Worship, if you look on the 52nd Street, north of 52nd Avenue, there is also a walking trail from 52nd Avenue to 53rd Avenue. On the west side of the road, there is another walking trail which we clear the snow on the walking trail, as well as either we do the plow, make a windrow and haul out the snow, and now we have the snow blower. So we are planning to do the haul out in that area, or push the snow all the way in the Centennial Park, and we can maintain that walking trail. That walking trail will start from 51st Street all the way up to 53rd Street. It will be asphalt paved, not concrete one. and it will be 1.5 meter wide.
As long as that consideration was put into the mix.
And this walking trail was on the books for so many years. I think I can see last 5 years it's always coming in and out and in and out, so.
Because we really can't go on the north side of the trees, then it would interfere with the soccer field. You wouldn't get the nets up.
Depending how far you do go, yes. And all diamonds especially, but the soccer field.
Well, even more the soccer field, because the net comes back right to the trees.
Yeah.
So if you're on the other side of the trees, that asphalt's gonna be inside the net.
They won't escape.
Yeah, but that's gonna hurt.
All right, so I'll move on. So the next one is the gas main distribution. So Nawaz alluded to some of this in his operating stuff. Basically, what we're doing is we're starting the distribution replacement master plan, is, I guess, for lack of a better word, how I would describe it. So the distribution lines were originally installed in 1953. Design life for these lines is around 75 years. So we've basically exceeded, we're not quite exceeded that, but we're getting towards exceeding that at this point in time. So it's sort of a 10-year plan. It's going to move into our annual programs type thing, where we have a certain amount that we set for replacement, refurbishments, that kind of thing. Roundabouts $80,000 per year this year. With where we've got it planned, it's roundabouts 85,000. So again, another service excellence and community sustainability as well, in that we need to make sure we keep our gas service optimal. What this would do is we would be replacing the steel lines that are currently existing with polyethylene lines, which obviously are made to last significantly longer. Another project that we funded through the utility reserve directly relates to our utility services, and this is the type of thing that our increase in the UCI rates is targeted towards to allow us to do these types of projects for sustainability purposes. Any questions?
I'm working on the government to change their definition of rural and urban. So we can get Federation gas co-op money for stuff like this.
Do you have any questions on this one? Okay.
Good to go for them. Okay, awesome. All right, so Nawaz's biggest project, the sand salt mix storage shed. So, if anyone's seen, we had an old storage shed that we stored our sand salt mix in. I don't think there was any concrete there, it's just sitting on the ground, right? So the goal with this is to replace the existing storage shed, which is deteriorated and starting to fall apart. We'll replace it with a concrete pad, build it up, and make it more environmentally conscious at the same time. This is a big feature for us in that we provide this product as well to the community with our community boxes, so we want to make sure we don't lose a bunch of it due to water getting in or something causing it to spoil, basically. So again, another service excellence one, and this one will just be funded by the Streets Reserve. Any questions on that one? Yes?
I've got a really weird question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be, if the salt and sand mix storage has been there for so many years, the ground is saturated with salt, are we going to be able to put the concrete right on over top of it, or is there going to be any remediation that is required?
It's already there.
Go ahead, Nawaz.
So, Your Worship and Councillor Butcher, what we did this year, we removed the existing because it was already falling apart. So we remove everything, clean up all the area, and we rebuild the base. And so rebuilding the base means we bring a new clay to compact the clay, we put the gravel, and we made the concrete, because the 4-inch of the concrete pad we already made. And now this cost will be to buy more concrete blocks to put the surrounding, and then put a roof on the top.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else before I move on? No. All right, so the next one I've just lumped together. Again, this is something that you see every year. We've got our sidewalks and our road overlays. So I call these annual programs, basically, is an annual maintenance replacement item. So I won't go into too much depth on them. You can see how we funded it. Again, this is where we have to leverage our grants. And then the other big thing that I forgot to put in the operating presentation, unfortunately, is In this budget, we've upped our $40,000 operating transfer to capital to $80,000 as we discussed. So that is included in the budget as well. I forgot to highlight that before. And again, what we spoke to when we did the budget guiding directives was to steadily increase this to the point where our capital spend and hopefully get us to amortization eventually. So a $40,000 increase is what we've targeted year over year to continue increasing it. So as you can see, primarily funded sidewalks is through the CCBF grant, a little bit from reserves, and then a portion from the MSI. The roads is all MSI except for the portion of it that's funded by our operating transfer capital to reserve, or operating transfer to capital. We're there. Any questions on those? Other than what Dwayne wants on, Councillor Spicer wants on the additional information?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if we're gonna get to a point where we may be able to skip a year or, you know.
Your worship and member of the council, yeah, skipping of the year, when we talking, we skip on the year on the sanitary sewer lining project in 2023. Because we did not have enough funding to do all three projects, because you remember we did the sidewalk and the roadway, the 10-year capital plan, which we following strictly, the same thing which we did for our sanitary sewer lining project, but we thought we can skip this one because we don't have a limited funding, so we skip that project and we focus on more on the streets and the sidewalk, so that a year after, in 2024, we put more money on the sanitary lining project.
Okay.
Anything else on that one?
Anything for
We're just saying, we both won't be skipping it. The roads and sidewalks, we'll just be decreasing it and putting more in. We're almost getting to that point.
Every
just
year
gonna-
we have to look at the shopping list and
Oh, yeah.
how we're gonna fund it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to piggyback on what Councillor Spicer was saying earlier. When I read through this originally, it's a double-edged sword. Yes, we have to maintain our infrastructure. We've criticized other municipalities who've changed midstream and said, no, we're not going to do this or we're not going to do that. And we've gone, ooh, that could come back to bite them. With the fact that our administration has been pointing out that inflation has knocked the socks out of the capital budgeting process because it's the best guess, I'm wondering if it's not a smart idea to take our least expensive of the overlay program and push that 1 year farther down the road. That way, if we have more inflation, the penalty is going to be the least as opposed to doing it on the most expensive. It saves us a few dollars in our reserve should we get hammered by bigger prices from suppliers. But at the same time, my concern is that originally the information that we were given on the roads and sidewalk assessment was that if we were to spend an average of $150,000 annually, we would have everything looked after in a 7 to 10 year project. And now this one is looking at, what was the total?
$226,100.
Yeah, so it's a lot more than the $150,000 annually that was originally presented to council some time ago with a 7 to 10 year expectancy. So I'm kind of devil in deep blue sea. Do we do all of it at the expensive rate and live with it? Do we save a little bit in case we get hammered with some of it? Do we not worry about it and just move straight ahead and spend all of it? I just don't know what the actual best answer to that question is, and I think it deserves a little bit of look at, along with the sidewalks and along with the curbs and gutters and all of those projects, to see if there's maybe a little bit of a cushion that we can build to help ourselves next year, because my understanding is 2024 is when we lose 20% of MSI moving to LGFF.
So, two pieces to that, if I can respond. If we see the inflation increases that are potentially going to hit, we would look at canceling portions of it so that we're not exceeding the funding, because this is all grant funded. So we're not planning to exceed this. If the numbers come in higher, we would look at reducing for sure at that point, not to exceed. That being said, definitely we can look at reducing where we're at. That's absolutely best suggestion I would have to top this off is let us provide the statistics for the amount that's done, and then from that we can look at reducing or removing if that works for you at that point, because then you'll have the statistics in front of you. You can make a decision based on the statistics and then add the money into that equation as well at that time. That works. So I will put that on the flagged items as well with the providing of the actual statistics as well.
Go ahead, Mr. Mabule.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I could just add to that, and I think it's partly what I was alluding to when I opened my comments on capital budget is to keep that flexibility. You and I were at, and all of council was at Alberta Munis when we spoke with a municipality who said, you know, they did a bridge structure and it was $4 million that they had budgeted for, and it came in at $8 million, and they just went, you know what, we're just gonna wait, right? And I think we gotta keep that flexibility in mind, that just because we have this budgeted, if we get numbers that don't make sense, it might make sense for us to just say, you know what, we're not gonna do any of those projects, we're gonna keep our powder in our gun, so to speak, and we'll fire the gun at a different time, right? And of course, part of that discussion will be is there something that we absolutely have to do because something's gonna fail, right? And that's, I think, the flexibility that I think we're gonna have to go into this season with, especially when it comes to our sidewalks and our lining and our gas projects and all of those kinds of things, because construction costs right now are just a crapshoot. And there doesn't seem to be any, I don't wanna throw smoke or smack at our construction industry, because I know they're battling the same things we are, but sometimes there just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why you're getting the quotes that you're getting in, right? And so maybe you just don't do them.
I'm talking to a builder this week and he wouldn't even give me a quote. He says one week the price for a piece sheet of plywood is $45, the next week it's 20, and the week after that, who knows?
Councilor Wilson.
This may be more work for somebody here or somebody not here, but I think, personally, I think if I seen a map of the town, for the street, what streets for the overlay have been done and sidewalks and stuff, you know, I know the sidewalks will be hard because you did 3 meters here, but to see where, like, what's been done, I mean.
It should be mapped, so.
Yeah, Your Worship and member of council, Councilor Olson, yes, we do have the maps, and not only the street overlays, but on every infrastructure we upgrading. The gas, the sanitary line, the sidewalks, if it is 3 meter, I said 30 meter, we mark, there will be a small dot, but there will be a dot on the map. You can see this was replaced, and which year is this.
All on GIS then?
Not on the GIS, but on the hard copy, then we are making on the digital side.
Okay.
And when we upgrade with the Muni side, it will show on the Muni side. And especially on the Muni side, we put that which year it has been overlaid, just like any. And another example I can give you, the 46th Street, south of the Highway 38. That street, when we visited in 2019 and 2020, there was not many potholes and wasn't in rough shape. But this year, when the spring came this year, that street looks like just like a gravel road. And those are the weather implications on especially on the infrastructure. And the roadway, typically roadway, the design life for the overlay is 15 to 20 years. And those streets never been repaved in last 50 years. So if any project which we are doing, say which we did in say 2007 and 8, they need another overlay in next couple of years.
Anything else on the,
Just clarify, if we're bringing the statistics for the linear meters, are you wanting the maps for the last 5 years as well? Or are you not wanting these maps?
No, I'd like to see a map, because it's more visual for me.
Would you like it?
For you to tell me that we did 3,000 meters
Yeah.
of asphalt.
So
Like,
do you want it for the 5 years, I guess, or you wanting?
sure, if it- whatever, whatever Nawaz has got, yeah.
To make a motion to go past 9?
I was gonna ask you guys, I can probably get through this in 10 minutes, but just in case, do we want to look at just a slight increase? Because I want to get through this, like, we're right on the tail end of it.
Go ahead, Councillor Spicer.
Make a motion that we extend the meeting till 9:30?
Discussion on the motion? All in favor? It's carried.
All right, so move on to the next one.
I just have one
Oh,
quick
sure,
question, because what I don't understand about this grant things, and I don't know why I can never get it straight in my head, but if we decide not to go through with the overlays and the sidewalks, do we lose that grant funding? Okay.
We can absolutely roll it forward or reallocate it to other items. What we can't do is hide it somewhere. So,
Put it in the reserve
Exactly.
long term.
Yeah, I'll also say if you don't, the way the grant funding works now, if you don't, I have to submit like project applications. If you don't commit 100% of your grant funding, they'll only send you like 50%. So, so if you are carrying it over, it stays like
With them.
with them. So we wouldn't have the money.
Creates a
but,
cash flow
yeah,
issue for us
so-
at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're not doing the project to need the cash.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not like we can hold and be like, oh, we're gonna make some interest on this and tuck it here, right? So, yeah,
Thank
you
you.
don't lose it. It doesn't happen.
Makes sense, thank you.
All right. Anything else before we go? No? Okay. Awesome. So I forgot about this one. This is actually Nawaz's highest
Yeah.
one, actually. I forgot about this one. So, as Nawaz mentioned, sanding box spreader. So, the big goal behind this one, again, is to leverage efficiencies. So, what this allows us to do is use a 1 ton or a 3/4 ton, whatever capacity is needed for it, but it allows us to use a normal truck to spread the sand and do the things that we do with our sanding truck right now, and continue to use our sanding truck as a haul truck for the snow now that we've got our snow blower. So the big goal with this is to increase our efficiency and save us money on trucking at that point, because we will have a dedicated truck on top of our normal tandem. Is that our normal tandem?
No, it's a single axle, but it's at a.
Right, so on top of our normal tandem for hauling, we would then have 2 trucks, and it would cost us less to contract out the hauling and still be able to provide that service for our residents to remove it that much faster. So, small price to pay, in my opinion, to increase the efficiency as significantly as it should do. Again, another project that's just funded out of our streets reserve in that way. Any questions on that one? All right. So again, this is the bridge rehabilitation project. So another one that's been beaten to death in council meetings, so I won't go into too much detail on it, is our bridge that's just north of the workshop and the transfer station. Obviously needs some work, some rehabilitation. Comparatively at this point, rehab would cost us around $448,000, which would increase the useful life by 20 years. Replacement of the bridge would be around $3.5 million to put into scale. So administration at this point is recommending a rehabilitation project instead of replacement. The big caveat to this project is it is entirely dependent on when we would receive STIP funding, because we would not be able to finance this without borrowing outside of our outside of the STIP grant at this point. So the 2 funding methods utilized for this one right now is the STIP grant for 75%, and then the remaining 25% would be our cost, which we have at this point allocated to a theoretical reserve that will be established from the potential surplus that we would see this year. If we don't see a potential surplus, we wouldn't have that reserve, and we'd have to find a different way of funding it. Any questions on that one?
Go ahead.
The plan is that would put us to what, 2048 to actually have to replace it?
Yeah, it'd be 20 years from when we do whatever repair, so, yeah.
So I'd hope we'd start a reserve fund, I assume, to start building towards that?
That would be the ideal situation. The dependent on a significant number of factors, but yes, that would be the ideal situation.
Where
Is
you're gonna get the reserve from.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
yeah.
It'll be
So
taxation probably.
Yeah, it'd have to be, but if it's a small portion of the year.
well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe you can. I don't know. I don't know how the rules work in Alberta for that. But one of the things that I will caveat to this funding and everything is what we want to do this year is do what we've got with what we've established. There's some pretty significant plans we have for next year. Council workshops, planning sessions, things like that, specifically around infrastructure and infrastructure funding, where we will get into those types of sessions for sure.
I would say when you're gonna be replacing the bridge, you're probably gonna have to borrow. What was it?
But it'd be nice to have a little,
In 20 years, I don't think we're gonna establish a reserve of $4 million.
You never know. I'm more optimistic. Maybe we will, but.
Oh.
More grants are available than either.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I guess the one thing I would say on this one is that the STIP grants are a crapshoot at best. And I wouldn't want to say that, you know, our chances, this would be the first year that we would apply. So grants are due November 29th. Yeah. So grants for next year, we have to have the grant into the province for funding in 2023. We have to have that grant in by the end of this month, basically November 29th. Like I said, I would have told you that we're, you know, on the electrical vehicle charging stations, we probably, you know, our chances of getting that one weren't very good in the first year, but we got it. I would say the same thing for STIP grants the first year that they're on a list. Do they never get funded in the first year? No. Do they rarely get funded in the first year? Yes. And it's something that you reapply for again and again and again. And again, if we don't get that grant funding in 2023, then we wouldn't be doing it, and we would push it over, and that would give us more time to put a reserve in place even for the 112,000.
And starting it at least for
Yeah.
the potential surplus, right? So
But if we get that grant funding this year, you know, knock on wood, if we are successful, and we have $112,000 that we either have to fund through any surpluses we have, or we gotta find a different funding mechanism, which may include borrowing at that point.
Councilor Wilson, go ahead.
We gotta make sure Mr. Nally, now that he's a full-blown minister, maybe he's got, you know, he's got his hand on the rope, you know, to give it a tug this time, maybe. But that's all he's told us, you know, to make sure any grants and that we put in for, make sure he gets them, so he knows, sign off on them or
double
whatever.
check with Nawaz, do we need a because this budget won't be passed by, what did you say, November 29th?
December 1st. December 1st at the earliest.
Yeah, do you need a council resolution to be able to apply for this grant?
No, we don't need the resolution for the council, and November 30th is the last day for the application. So we already, all the paper was ready,
Okay,
and I'm.
just wanted- sometimes you have to have a resolution, right?
On this side, no, we don't need the resolution.
Because then do
Good
something.
catch. Good catch. Go ahead.
Good, okay, all right, so I'll move on to the next one. This is a carry forward project from last year, so I won't go into too many details on it, but one of the projects we wanted to do was a utility right-of-way drainage ditch. Didn't get done this year, unfortunately, due to other priorities, so it's just a roll forward. Funded through the utilities reserve, so there's no, basically it's just, last year we didn't spend the money from the reserve, we're gonna spend it next year from the reserve instead, so it's just a roll forward for reapproval. Any questions or information you want around that one? I did send the business case with that last year's business case, so the information's there. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, so, oh,
Go ahead.
We got land right-of-ways and everything now, or?
This is the cost for the compensation to the landlord, to the landowner basically. So we are still working with the landowner, and we haven't got any finalized details, so that's how we wanna carry over for the next year.
Okay, so we're still waiting for pipeline act or right-of-ways and all that?
So that sort, we decided to make a berm, so we're still working with the landlord to get the permission. And if the landlord agreed, then we can talk to the pipelines, and based on our initial discussion, the pipeline doesn't have any problem to make a berm. as long as no any heavy equipment is coming over. So, but now we are working with Mr. Webster to get the permit.
Okay.
The ditch wouldn't work, 'cause
Yeah.
there's too many pipelines
Too many
down there.
pipelines.
Too many shallow
Lines.
Yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay, on to the next one then. So, two left. This one took us for a bit of a ride as we were going through our planning and our budgeting. Obviously, our truck fill system basically got torn out of the entire wall. So this was kind of an interesting one while we were in the midst of discussing it, and Nawaz got the call. So it was kind of interesting timing. But
You pay them.
so the project as presented currently is upgrades to our motor control center and variable frequency drives for the pumping station. Basically what's happening is the equipment that's in there for these types of things is starting to near the end of its useful life, if not already at the end of its useful life. So what we're looking at is a replacement just to ensure continuing operation of the pumping station. So again, another service excellence one. I don't want to hammer that one too hard. And then funded through the utility reserve, again, the same as the other ones, the utilities. Any questions on that one?
Go ahead, Councillor
Is
Olson.
any of this being replaced by insurance due to the incident?
Go ahead,
So Your Worship and the Councillor Olson, no, because straightforward answer is no, because when the engineer came and other contractor came, they prepared the inspection reports, and this MCC or the VFD didn't get the damage.
Oh, okay.
But those are the old type of parts.
Yeah.
And even upgrade, and those are based on the condition assessment that has been done last year. Based on the condition assessment, we have to upgrade those two systems, so.
Yeah.
They would pay us, but only if we paid the balance. It would be a large balance.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else before we move on to the last one here? Home stretch. There you go. Okay. So the last one is a continuation of our fire hydrant replacements. So I believe we've got one left to do, one left of the old system to replace. So on the capital side, this is the last of the fire hydrant replacements. The rest of them are refurbishments that are captured within the operating budget. So again, we are required to maintain and operate a fire hydrant system within the town. So it's a legislative requirement that we are required to maintain and uphold. So we're near the end of our project, and hopefully we'll be looking at more refurbishments than replacements for the near future. And again, funded by the utility reserve. Any questions?
Council? Anything from anybody?
No, very informative.
It's to tomorrow and December 1st. Will you be able to access, like, if we wanted to deep dive into one GRC, you know, instead of just having, I'll just use admin finance or admin projects or something? You can log in and break it down. 'Cause I know, like, council, you got what, 299? Well, that's broken down further.
Oh, you mean like breakouts for what's involved in the projects?
Well, just involved that underneath, like, the breakout of the 299. You got it here. Like, I'm just using council as an example.
Like breaking out more of the.
Yeah, like,
Oh, like the
on the line
information.
item, you got a line item
Sure.
for council for 299, but if,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, what,
Yeah, we can have a laptop here, and
Yeah.
if you have a specific question on
Yeah,
it,
just
we can
so we
pop it
can.
up and
Yep,
go through
yep.
what's in it.
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
No
Sure.
problem.
Yep, we can provide that. So to cap off the capital presentation, I didn't review them, but they provided for your information is our grant and our reserve continuity, so you can see where the funding hits, where it's coming from. So if there's any questions, anything along those types of things too, then feel free.
I'll just hit on a couple of highlights. You'll see, like, on the grant one, we're basically using all of our grants by the end of 2023, all of our projected grants, say that. And on the reserve side, it looks a little scary, but I'll explain one of the main reasons why we started this year with nearly 2.4 million, and we're ending 2023 with 1.3 million. That feels a little scary. You'll see under the planning and development section, we utilized 550,000, 500, yeah, that is right. I'm getting really bad at 9 o'clock at night. 550,000 for the development project. So that's a big ticket item that's being used in 2022, right? So I just don't want you to look at that bottom line and be like, holy moly. Or other words similar to that, where will the money go? So that was one of the big reasons, because of that money being set aside from services due to COVID things that didn't happen right, as well as leftover securities that became our money in reserves. So just an FYI, just don't freak out when you look at the budget. But if you have any other questions on those, just let us know tomorrow.
Does anybody have anything they want to send through to administration so that they can prepare for tomorrow? Any other questions or concerns?
If there's any other flagged items, please let us know so we can bring as much information as possible to tomorrow. The one thing I will say as well is flagged items that we can answer or that come up tomorrow still, I will still communicate those out so that the information is shared in a timely manner for you guys to review and everything. But we will recap all the information that I send by email at the beginning of the December 1st council meeting so the public can see it as well.
So tonight, council, I'm sure you'll all be reading through the material at great lengths. If you do have any questions, I know administration would be more than happy to get them by email.
Yes, please.
So that they have as much opportunity as they can to get you the information that you're looking for. Is there anything else from administration that's needed for tonight's meeting?
If anything comes up, if you think of something at 2 in the morning and you just want to fire off the email, I won't read it, but I will see it in the morning. Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate.
Anything from administration through to council? Anything you want us to pay particular attention to or look-see at or make sure we understand that's important?
Nothing specific, just please, take the time, review it, digest it. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out. But most of all, thank you for letting us do this, and hope we answered as many questions as possible, and continue to do so tomorrow.
Mr. Van Buel?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I know we said we'd go till 9:30, so maybe I'll throw a question back to council. Is the information the information that we provided today, is it helping you make decisions, or is it what you expected, I guess, is maybe the question?
Go ahead, Councillor Butcher.
Well, being through a lot of budgets, clearly this one is very well laid out. It will get us digesting and thinking about it and bringing questions back to you. But I think administration and the management team has done a fabulous job of presenting a very clear cut and the hard bumps we're gonna have to go through. So you've all done a fantastic job.
Thank you. I guess the only thing I want to say is that I'm kind of looking forward to priority A and priority B. Only because 7.062, that was hard to say. But I'm interested to see how supportive, I'll use that word, administration can be for a council by telling us things that we might not fully understand or digest in the short term that we have, to take a look at. I found your email with the business case material very helpful. It let me sat and take a look at things, and I think there was an important message in your email where it talked about preconception and making sure we don't sully the waters by walking in here with where are we going to be. We need to hear all the information. We need to see what we can do. We need to make comments to our managers that say, I don't know what the optics really look like at this point in time. Will everybody understand that process that brings community into the package? And it's not really us spending money, it's us getting money that can be spent, sort of thing. So Those, I think, are important steps in a budget process, and not everybody understands them. So, like I say, I'm really interested in priority A and priority B, just to see where it takes us and as a council to make some decisions on those issues, so.
Absolutely. So today, like I said at the beginning, today is the information share. This is everything that we've prepared for you to review and discuss, give us questions, and then we really get into the heavy deliberations. I don't want to say the heavy deliberations tomorrow, but we want to start that off to give you guys time to really, really digest it for December 1st.
Anything else from council? Councillor Butcher,
Motion to adjourn, your worship.
thank you very much.
I was waiting for Robert.
I was too, but he was